Hello everyone, welcome to What If Deku Inherited Lemillion's Powers movie. Before we start, please go support Dragneil Slayer for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistaken character's gender, but of course Deku is a male. The god Mirio is the hero Lemillion. What happened when he lost his powers at the hands of the Yakuza? What did he feel? How did he react? Did he remain a hero or throw in the towel? I'm Lemillion. The rain seemed to be punishing Japan as a whole. A ferocious storm had finally fallen on the Asian archipelago, forcing people to hide inside their homes, protecting themselves from the dangers of that thunderous storm that was truly frightening them. They had never seen a storm of that magnitude. It brought back memories of the Camino incident, the confrontation between All Might and All for One, which destroyed the city by several acres. If the symbol of peace hadn't been there facing the most powerful villain of all time, everyone would have ended up dead. No, if All Might had surrendered at the last second, everyone would have ended up dead. Only the symbol of peace had been able to protect them from the tragedy that had befallen them, destroying homes and leaving people completely unprotected. After that incident, nothing else had really happened for them, except for the recent incident with the Yakuza solved by a coalition of hero agencies that had involved many heroes below the top, except for the dragon heroine Ryukyu, who had agreed to the request of the hero who had formed that group. But as in all confrontations between villains and heroes, not everyone emerged completely unscathed. With the shining rise of the hero Deku, who rose to defeat the Yakuza leader, accompanied by a little girl who seemed to help him keep his quirk under control, many heroes were seriously injured and eventually died. Among those heroes was All Might's former teammate, Sir Nijire. The man was fatally wounded while helping his two pupils, the hero Lemillion and the young hero Deku, whom he initially did not openly acknowledge, but after watching him fight against Chisaki, he realized that the boy had completely destroyed his future, rewriting his destiny completely before his eyes. When he left the world, he knew that there were great heroes like the young Deku to protect him, forcefully taking up All Might's legacy himself to save all the people of the world at the cost of their lives. But that incident resolved, everything returned to normal for the people and the hero apprentices, leaving the clashes with villains behind for a long time and giving way to Endeavor as the #1 hero in Japan, not being too well regarded by All Might's fans. Could a hero like Endeavor really do well carrying the full weight of being the symbol of peace? The question remained. The goddess senpai. Can you still move? The shot really hit a critical spot on your body. Hahaha. Easy, easy. I'm fine. Besides, Sir wouldn't want me to stay in bed too long. The cheerful response filled the ears of a freckled green-haired man. He pressed his lips together into a thin line that went unnoticed by Togata, a member of UA's Big Three and former apprentice of Sir Nijire and companion of the young green-haired man during the latter's internship. Like his mentor, the young man was seriously injured in the last battle against Chisaki and was forced to spend some time in the hospital. Don't worry too much, Midoriya. You mumble too much when you do. And sometimes it's scary and sinister. Sorry. The young man with the disheveled green hair was none other than Midoriya Izuku, wielder of One for All, and heir to the great All Might as the next symbol of peace. The boy had defeated Chisaki using his power at 100% thanks to Eri and her quirk of rewinding everything back to prevent his body from being destroyed by a simple smash against the Yakuza. Hahaha. Don't apologize so much, man. The god Mirio gave one of his huge smiles. Energetic. Smiling. Strong in his own right. Among the students at UA, Mirio was initially labeled as a simple loser who couldn't achieve anything. His quirk was uncontrollable and few could see the boy as anything more than a joke. But that was just the beginning. Togata Mirio, the hero Lemillion, was the representation that what was achieved with effort left a mark on history and on the people who were watching it. That was what made Sir notice that inept boy in his beginnings. His incredible stubbornness and his refusal to give up, wanting to show that he was going to save 1,000,000 people with his huge smile. Togata Mirio was the young man who grew the most within the academy, leaving his mark wherever he went. And Midoriya would attest to that. Togata senpai. What's up now, Midoriya? He asked as he took off his hospital gown, changing into his civilian clothes. A sports jacket, blue jeans, and a shirt with the UA logo shining on the chest. With those clothes, Mirio could truly be taken as the young athlete from the school that was so often portrayed in American series and movies. I think it would be better if you had One for All. Those words stopped the blue-eyed blonde's movements. Togata let out a light sigh, knowing what his partner and now friend was thinking. He knew about the words Sir had said to him, how hard it had been for him, and he also knew everything relevant about the symbol of peace's power, such as that he was one of the possible bearers, being defeated by Midoriya in All Might's election. And he had nothing against the symbol of peace's judgment. He had seen how young Midoriya sacrificed himself for Eri when they came for her, how he felt when they discovered who Chisaki was, and Eri herself having had her within inches, just a few steps. They could have rescued her at that moment, but their judgment simply failed and it would be something that both Midoriya and he would carry for the rest of their lives. But he wasn't going to take something he didn't want. He lost his quirk fighting Chisaki, and the same thing could have happened even if he carried One for All with him, which would have been even worse for future generations and the events to come. Without One for All, who could save the future the younger ones needed? No, the true bearer of that quirk had to be Midoriya, not him. Midoriya. Calm down. I'm fine. He punched the green-haired boy's back several times, displaying a huge grin on his lips, making his fellow first-year feel slightly uncomfortable with the confidence in his words. Mirio was always self-confident and it wasn't something that was going to change anytime soon. Having his quirk taken away wasn't a real impediment for him or something that was going to knock him down. He had overcome every obstacle to be able to control his quirk and he wasn't going to be stopped now by a simple wall that had appeared in his path. Soon he would return to the fray so he could be Lemillion once more. Safe. Hahaha. Don't worry so much, man. You have to have confidence in yourself to be able to make others smile. He declared forcefully, raising his arm and giving his huge smile. Togata puffed out his chest slightly and marked the muscles in his right arm. If you don't believe in yourself, others won't. And? Louder. And? Shut up, both of you, book. Togata laughed nervously at the head nurse's shouts, which spread to his classmate. Midoriya gritted his teeth a little, but relaxed completely, thanks to his senpai's words. Mirio was right. If he didn't believe in himself, why would people? Sir was dead, and there was nothing he could do to bring him back. Togata had lost his powers because of a Yakuza invention made with Eri-chan's blood, but now the girl was with them. If they had Eri, they could get Togata's quirk back, which would be the return of the hero Lemillion. Looks like we've angered the boss, huh? Togata looked directly at Midoriya, immediately feeling a drop of sweat run down his temple as he watched him mutter, generating a gloomy aura around himself and creating a slightly tense and icy atmosphere. Midoriya. Without any fear, he slammed his hand vertically against the green-haired boy's head, snapping Almight's air out of his train of thought. Midoriya laughed slightly nervously, seeing his senpai's wide smile as he looked at him in amusement. How many times do I have to tell you not to do that? It's scary. And Tamaki is afraid of everything. Is Tamaki-senpai here? He's been staring at us and banging his forehead against the wall for about half an hour. I need to cheer him up a bit, man. Following his senpai's eyes, the one-for-all wielder watched a dark-haired third-year boy lightly bump against the wall, as if he wanted to go through the building with his body, perhaps in an attempt to copy Togata when he went through walls. That shy boy was none other than Tamaki Amajiki, a member of the UA's Big Three, despite his special, extremely shy character, being an intern of the hero Fat Gum, a man who saw what was special in Tamaki himself when he met him, observing the hidden brilliance in the third-year teenager. Sorry, Tamaki-senpai. Don't worry, Midoriya, I just want to get out of here. Can we go now, Mirio? The nurses are staring at me. Togata gave a small smile at that, remembering that Tamaki really was too shy. He had watched him grow up. They grew up together. They had practically been friends since elementary school, creating a good relationship between them. But his shy side hadn't completely gone away. It had clung to his being even more than Mirio could understand. Despite the years and depending on the situation, Tamaki could choose to become a boy too shy to even speak to anyone other than Nijire himself. But anyway, that was a job for later. Okay. We're leaving now. Mirio grabbed a backpack with some of his things, finally walking out of the room he'd occupied for a few weeks while he regained his peak physical condition. He wouldn't be able to get his quirk back. That much he knew. The only one who could get him back to how he was a little girl with the ability to rewind everything to a previous state. A powerful quirk, but one that caused stress in the little girl, causing a horn to appear on her forehead. As UA's student and a former hero, Mirio wasn't going to let Eri suffer as much as a child should. He hated seeing children used as mere tools by adults. He despised those who saw a child as a toy, as something completely replaceable, and something they could change whenever they wanted. He saw it when Chisaki used Eri for his experiments, taking her blood to create bullets that would erase a person's quirk forever. Or at least that was the Yakuza's intention. From what Tamaki once told them, he was damaged by a similar bullet, causing him to lose his powers for a time and forcing Kirishima to fight for him. But he had no choice. When Eri was pointed at by one of Chisaki's henchmen, he could only stand in front of the girl, receiving the shot and the wounds that followed. He wasn't angry. Nor was he upset about losing his powers. Not too much, at least. He had saved Eri, and that was what Togata needed to know to stay on his feet for another day. So, Togata-senpai, what are you going to do now? Without your quirk, will you be able to stay inside UA? Asked the green-haired teenager. Tamaki blinked at his best friend as Midoriya's question echoed through the hallway. And that question made sense. UA had hero students with quirks they could execute perfectly, highlighting their quality as a hero. But Mirio had lost that quality. He could no longer fulfill his dream of being the hero who could save a million people, who could keep children smiling. Worried, Tamaki glanced briefly at his friend, searching for any hint of frustration or sadness. But as always, Togata Mirio simply maintained that delicate smile on his lips, walking briskly, raising his arms like a character from a comic book. Hahaha. Don't worry, Midoriya. Surely the principal will want to talk to me and I'll be removed from the hero class. I'm not sure about it, but it's the most logical thing to do, as Aizawa-sensei would say, Mirio replied with that huge smile on his face. It was shiny. Self-confident. At first glance, there was no crack in it. Tamaki frowned slightly at Mirio's smile, as if nothing had happened, as if he wasn't suffering from being removed from the hero class, from losing his quirk, and from being treated like a cripple. He even seemed to display that confidence when he was actually screaming about his mentor's death. Tamaki wasn't going to be fooled. He knew Mirio inside out. They'd shared classes and conversations for hours every day of the year for the past 10 years, if he remembered correctly. It was impossible for him not to see the cracks in that shining smile. Haha, that's normal, Midoriya nodded, not too convinced by his superior's words. Midoriya had seen it briefly. That fragility Tamaki saw in the smile, the wielder of One for All, could capture it for only a second. But it was with that he truly doubted his senpai's words. Could he really handle all that change being the way he was, going from someone with a quirk to someone without a quirk? I've been there before, Izuku watched Mirio's back as he walked intently. Both he and Tamaki had realized that the huge Mirio-style grin was just an old reflex. One that could soon be completely destroyed if pushed hard enough. Midoriya clenched his fists. Tamaki tensed his body. The two hero apprentices weren't going to leave their friend and companion alone. Not now, when he was only a fragile reflection of Togata Mirio, the hero Lemillion. Hey, you two. We're going to be late. Mirio turned his head and fixed his intense eyes on his two companions. He gave a huge smile and refocused on the road ahead of him. Time to head back to UA. Tamaki pressed his lips together tightly. Was Mirio really going to go to that extent to prove he was okay? Midoriya shook his head. Didn't Mirio realize he was slowly suffering? But Togata Mirio just stood there, walking and reassuring those watching him. He was still Togata Mirio, the hero Lemillion, after all. The massive wall had appeared right in front of him, and with Sir's death, he was left partially alone. But now was no time for him to falter. He closed his fists and smiled a little, revealing again that confident smile that, for a second, fooled Tamaki. Eri still needs me, after all. He yelled intensely, ready to take on the role of older brother to the Yakuza's daughter. She was left completely alone, with an uncontrollable power that could be dangerous, and with a ghost behind her. He'd seen it. In her red eyes. Chisaki's shadow was still present behind the girl, trying to control her even though he was no longer with her. And as a hero he couldn't leave little Eri alone. Some time later, director's office. Slightly hesitant, looking at the enormous bookcase in that room, Togata Mirio took a pastry from the tray on the table, giving it a light bite and savoring it while sipping on some of the tea the director had offered him when he sat down to liven up the intense conversation they were about to have. Mirio knew what that conversation would be about. They were going to talk about his current status as a quirkless, someone without a quirk that would allow him to remain within UA Academy, and his possible expulsion from the same academy, or at least being moved to another class that wouldn't pose any problems for him. And I was okay with that. He could no longer be Lemillion, the hero who would save a million people. Without his permeability quirk, it made no sense to keep him in the hero class, allowing them to bring in another student from the general classes to take his place. And that somehow hurt him. Mirio wasn't going to admit it. What did it hurt to be removed from the hero class? He'd no doubt keep it to himself and avoid worrying his classmates like Tamaki or Nijire, and even Midoriya himself, whom he held in high regard for his efforts during his internship with Sir Night-Eye. Opening his mouth and expressing his concerns would only inconvenience his teammates and could end up distracting them during their training during the hero course. And he didn't want to be the one to cause an injury to one of his friends. Tamaki will be tricky, though, the young man with the golden toupee told himself, biting into his pasta again as he took another sip of his tea. Of all the UA students, Tamaki Amajiki knew him best, knowing his weaknesses and fears and how fragile he could become in that situation. If he didn't want to compromise his best friend, he would have to do his best to remain steadfast in the face of the situation. Mirio let a sigh escape his throat, finding the whole thing much more complex than he'd expected. Maintaining his usual smiling face was going to take all his strength throughout the day, leaving him completely mentally exhausted by the next day. Sorry. The young teenager stopped the pasta just as it was about to enter his mouth for the third time, watching a mouse bear dog jump onto the couch right in front of him. That animal also took a pastry and a cup of tea, giving a slight apologetic smile. I'm sorry, young Togata. I had something that kept me busy. I hope you enjoyed the special Hokkaido tea, the being declared in a calm voice, pouring himself some of his precious tea. Don't worry, Mr. Headmaster. Mirio declared, placing the cup back on the table and flashing one of his huge smiles. It's no problem at all. I haven't been waiting too long, anyway. And thanks for the tea. It was delicious. That mouse, miniature bear, dwarf dog was none other than the director of the prestigious UA. Nezu was his name. Haha. As intense as ever, Mr. Togata, Nezu said calmly, sipping his tea. However, we have a rather rigorous talk today. But before that, I truly sympathize with you. Sir Night was a singular and strange hero, very reserved. But nonetheless, his help was invaluable in capturing the Yakuza. Thank you, Mr. Director. Mirio smiled at the director's words. But behind that cheerful smile lay the sadness he was feeling. Good. Let's get to the topic that concerns us both. Your stay in the third year of the hero course, of course, Nezu declared. As principal, Nezu had been informed of the intern's condition as soon as the raid on the Yakuza base ended, receiving the unfortunate news of Sir Night death after the confrontation and of the current quirkless state of young Togata Mirio, the most talented young man within the academy and the one who could have been a good successor to Almight. It didn't surprise him that Sir would give his all for young Mirio. He would have done it too. But of course Midoriya was on par with young Mirio, especially in his conviction to be a hero and his own values that strongly pushed him to be one. I understand why you want to remove me, Mirio declared, lowering his face and looking at his hands. I no longer possess a quirk that allows me to deal with the everyday situations of a hero. I don't possess anything that makes me special to others. But even without a quirk I am the hero Lemillion. Blue eyes connected with the headmaster's dark ones for several seconds. A fierce unbreakable will lay behind them, like a powerful flame that engulfed him. Hahaha. Removing you from the hero course. That would definitely be a bit hypocritical of us, Nezu expressed after a raucous laugh, drinking some more of his precious tea. You see, young Togata. You are undoubtedly a hero inside and outside of this school. Not having a quirk. Without a doubt, your blow against Chisaki without a quirk would shut some mouths, my young student. Nezu expressed energetically, laughing happily. He had somehow obtained a video of Lemillion's confrontation with Chisaki. He saw with his own eyes how, wounded and without a quirk, Lemillion pulled Chisaki away from that girl. Retiring you from the program would be hypocritical when it's our fault you're in this situation, Nezu continued, with that calm voice. Lemillion must continue to shine a little more, Togata. Just enough to ignite the hearts of people with hope. What do you mean? Mirio asked doubtfully. Nezu took a deep breath, letting out a sigh. Togata Mirio. Surely you've come to find yourself expelled from the hero program, right? However. What would that make us? UA is a school for aspiring heroes. You have proven yourself to be more than just a student of the academy, young Togata. You have proven yourself to be a hero with your actions in protecting young Eri. Nezu declared energetically. For the most intelligent being on the planet, that little rodent had too much hyperactivity that could surprise more than one. Enki and Mina, from Class A, were among those who understood this during the end of semester exam. It would be hypocritical of the academy to expel someone who has as much right as anyone else to become a hero. You saved Eri, you sacrificed yourself for Eri by giving your quirk and physical integrity. There is no way we will remove you from the hero course, young Togata. The hero isn't defined by his quirk, but by his actions, by his will, the director continued, taking another pastry from the tray. They were truly delicious, and he regretted not having asked Yagi for more. A long time ago, I met a journalist. Someone quirkless. The man couldn't get into a hero academy because of his condition. Do you know what happened to that man, young Togata? Without a quirk, without hero equipment, that man saved 30 children from a school fire, deciding not to wait for professionals or firefighters, taking the risk himself and watching the flames like a simple warm south wind. Is it because he doesn't have a quirk that my good friend isn't a hero? If he hadn't acted, the children would have died. The heroes weren't there. The firefighters were late. If that quirkless man hadn't acted, now 30 families wouldn't have their children with them, watching them grow up. One of them even walks these halls as a prospective hero, being in classroom A of the hero course. What happened to the man next? Togata asked with interest, leaning forward. He was accused of obstructing heroes. Sentenced to pay a fine of 60,000 yen. And he was hired by a small hero company as their assistant and journalist, as well as their marketing director, if I am not mistaken, Nezu reported, making no bones about the situation of this old friend he hadn't seen in a few years. At first, it seemed like he would be forgotten. But society doesn't forget. Especially not those truly honest heroes. Togata remained silent. His large blue eyes gazed at his own reflection in the tea he was drinking, watching as the liquid moved slightly, making small ripples. That boy who studies to be a hero and who was saved by that man, wants to be like him. He didn't notice Almight or Endeavor, but instead he noticed a simple man without a quirk who saved him from death. And that's admirable. Police officers, firefighters, and nurses save us every day, and few recognize their efforts. This society has grown to the point where only those with a quirk and who can demonstrate how strong they are as heroes are admired and considered heroes. Nezu left the empty cup on the table. Heroes only exist because villains exist. No, it would be better to point out that we are superheroes against supervillains. Heroes and villains have always existed and people stop them without a quirk to confront them. That's why I can't remove you, Togata. It would be too hypocritical of us and I would be staining the memory of my good friend. It sounds like he's dead. Not dead. Worse. With all the paperwork he has to do, he barely sleeps an hour. Hahaha. Ending the sentence with a booming laugh, the tension in the room finally subsided, shattered by the speech and the laughter of the dog Bear Mouse sitting on the couch. After all, that little creature named Nezu was one of the smartest beings on the planet, if not the smartest. For his part, young Togata let out all the air he didn't know he'd been holding. Years of training with his quirk had made him immune to noticing when he wasn't breathing. Using his quirk deprived him of air, so training his lungs was a difficult task. The boy looked at his hands, the hands of someone without a quirk, but who could still be, in a certain way, a hero. I want to keep saving people. For a brief moment, Eri's face came to mind. Since the girl was rescued from the Yakuza, he hadn't been to see her. He could sense how she felt. Lost, confused, perhaps afraid that Chisaki would come back into her life. Anyway, young Togata. The UA Cultural Festival is coming up soon. I look forward to seeing the first years put on a magnificent show. I just hope Aizawa gives them the information in time, the small rodent declared, jumping out of his seat to stand, being significantly smaller. I hope this has cleared up your doubts, young Togata. You won't be removed from classes anytime soon. You'll probably get your powers back and making you miss all that hard work would be too unpleasant on our end. Togata nodded at the headmaster's words, inwardly happy not to be removed from hero classes. Clearly, it would be impossible for him to be a hero without a quirk, but at least he could continue learning from his teachers and classmates until he graduated. Maybe I can help Sir's agency now that he's gone, he told himself, remembering his late mentor. That eccentric and strange hero had been the impetus that had driven him to truly become Lemillion, in every sense of the word. Without Sir, he probably wouldn't have been able to achieve his status as one of UA's big three. Nezu, for his part, observed the young student. He could see in the reflection of his blue eyes the flickering light of a fervent will to move forward, and he, as the headmaster of the prestigious UA Academy, would be there to support him. Is there anything else you want to talk about, headmaster? Togata asked, bringing the rodent out of his thoughts about the young man. No. I think everything's been closed in that conversation. I hope your classmates can rest easy now, the principal said, jumping up and opening the door. With a loud crash, two teenagers fell to the office floor, attracting the attention of Togata himself, who laughed nervously with a drop of sweat running down his chin. One of those young men was Tamaki, his best friend and life partner, as they had spent practically years together, arriving from high school to UA Academy side by side, always in the same class, and working together to become heroes. The other teenager, or rather the female teenager, was a girl with cyan hair that reached just below her buttocks, being long and beautiful, slightly curly at the end. Tamaki. Nijire. Pado Nijire, Mirio and Tamaki's partner, raised her round face with her blue eyes to give a peace sign to her partner. Like the black-haired boy, Nijire had been worried about her friend when she learned that he lost his powers, potentially abandoning UA completely and leaving them aside and unable to fulfill their dream. Mirio. Red with embarrassment, Tamaki stood up, lowering his face and caressing his neck with his hand, while the principal laughed softly, lowering his tone when another student passed in front of them. What are you doing? You should be in class, Togata pointed out, standing up from the couch. Come on, or the teacher will really get mad at you. Togata made a move to push his old friend, but was rejected by Tamaki himself, who, still unable to look his friend in the eyes, lowered his face even further. Tamaki? Togata blinked at Tamaki's behavior. He'd never rejected him like that before, swatting his hand away with a flick of his own, and he could see something strange and atypical in his partner's behavior. Stop smiling. With those words, Tamaki Amajiki faced someone for the first time in his life, none other than his best friend and comrade. With a strange determination, the young hero in training didn't hesitate despite his nerves. His legs trembled and cold sweat even trickled down his back. Ahaha. Come on. Stop that, Tamaki. You look weird and nervous. You're crazy, the blonde declared, trying to get his friend to drop the subject. But Tamaki wouldn't let him go. You smile, but you do so fragilely. You smile, but only to give us strength and courage so that we don't fall apart. Stop treating us like children, Mirio. We are heroes just like you. Lean on us if you can't walk on your own. Use me as a cane to continue walking down the path before our eyes, where your name as Lemillion will be cheered by everyone as the greatest hero. Stop pretending you're okay and just tell us your problems so we can help you. You are not alone. Tokyo Central Hospital. Walking through those corridors he had abandoned, Togata Mirio fervently searched for the room where the little girl he and the other heroes had rescued from Overhaul's clutches was, so he could give her a brighter, calmer, and happier future. That was now his mission as the hero Lemillion. To grant Eri the happy life every little girl should have. Determined, Togata stopped in front of the door of room where Eri was resting after the various tests. At the request of Principal Nezu himself, Eri had been placed under UA's custody until she was older, having direct access to a scholarship within the academy if she really wanted it, remaining under the tutelage of Aizawa as her tutor and protector. He still didn't understand how the first-year Class A homeroom teacher ended up being Eri's adoptive father, but he wasn't opposed to the fact either. It was 1,000 times better to have Aizawa as a father than present Mick himself, a man who would be screaming every few minutes and perhaps turn the girl into a copy of himself, something very few students would appreciate, much less the teachers. Togata moved his hand and grabbed the door handle, turning it slightly and pulling it to enter the room. The first thing that greeted him was a huge bed that could have been for 2 people, with white hospital sheets and the typical chair at one side of the bed, with that hard backrest that almost destroyed Tamaki's back when he went to visit him. Later, the young man noticed some lilies in a vase of water, fresh and probably recently placed due to how little wilted they seemed. Had they been placed there a few minutes before he arrived in the room? It was likely. A nurse or worker could have placed them there, and that would be indicative. Togata. Neutral, like an echo lost in the void, a man's voice rang in the teenager's ears. Togata Mirio shook his head, his eyes wide open at the sight before him. A truly amusing one, and one worth remembering. Aizawa-sensei. Hesitantly, Togata tried to discern if that man was really Aizawa Shota, the professional hero racerhead and the homeroom teacher of the A-hero class. With his hair tied back in schoolgirl pigtails, his lips glittering with glitter, and his eyes slicked with mascara, Aizawa Shota sent a neutral stare toward the third-year student that meant a lot. At least Togata actually grasped what the teacher's gaze was telling him. Clearing his throat, the teenager held back the laughter that was about to escape his throat. You should be in class. What are you doing here? Even with his made-up face and a pair of pigtails, Professor Aizawa did not lower his neutral gaze or his appearance of a hard and cold teacher that he gave to his first-year students. I came to see Eri. Lemillion. Before the young man could finish his sentence, a silver blur rushed towards him, forcing Togata to open his arms and catch the small figure that leaped towards them with speed and force. Lemillion. Lemillion. Mirio stood still for a few seconds, feeling thin, small arms wrap around him, squeezing his neck with a tiny bit of strength, as if it wanted to keep him there forever. And maybe he didn't want to leave her alone again. Hey Eri-chan, Mirio finally spoke, letting out a sigh and hugging the girl in his arms, all while Aizawa watched, trying to remain impassive. But the smudged mascara didn't really help. I see you have strength in these arms, Eri-chan. Yes. I'm eating vegetables like the doctor says. And vegetables will help me be like you and Deku. Walking over to the bed, Mirio placed the girl on it, watching as the mattress slowly sank under the little girl's weight. I'm going to get something from the vending machines, Aizawa walked toward the door without looking back. Eri, do you want something? Orange juice. And without further ado, the UA teacher left the room. In the absence of the adult, a silence fell between the little girl and the teenager. Mirio didn't know how to start the conversation or what to ask her. He'd been determined to see how Eri was doing, but now that he had her in front of him, he couldn't say a word beyond the initial sentence. Because after all, what could she ask him? A few weeks ago, Eri was the prisoner of a cruel man with delusions of grandeur, wishing to eradicate every quirk in the entire world, thinking of trading with the League and governments to create chaos in the world itself, and now Eri herself was in a hospital, with Chisaki out of her life, but with his shadow chasing her wherever she went. The teenager gradually lowered his face, trying to find a small thread to pull and begin to speak. Are you okay? Mirio opened his eyes when he felt a small hand on his head, caressing him. He should have been doing that to the little girl, and yet it was Eri who was comforting him. Was he being that pathetic? Different? I'm sorry that because of me you no longer have your quirk, the girl cut off the prospective hero, speaking in a delicate sing-song voice full of bells that seemed to come from fairies. I promise I'll bring your power back. I will. No. Mirio took the girl by the shoulders, staring intently into her eyes. You shouldn't strain yourself for me, Eri. It's okay, I'm fine. I don't need my powers to be Lemillion, after all. Or don't you remember that I can punch villains with my fists? The quirk is just a compliment to me. I'm still Lemillion. But. It's dangerous for you to use your powers. You're not well yet, Eri-chan. And I can handle villains with my unparalleled presence. After all, I'm a hero, right? And he gave a wide smile, bright as he used to give them, but fragile and brittle like ceramic itself. Well. Sighing with some satisfaction, Mirio finally stood up, giving his knees a rest. Being injured and spending time in the hospital had somewhat weakened his body. He'd have to get back in shape to keep up. And this. Drawn to a green object, Mirio bent down and picked it up, looking at what was a chibi version of the hero Deku, in the form of a soft, squishable plush toy, perfect for a small child. Deku? Mirio looked at the plush. Yes, it was a carbon copy of the hero Deku, the alter ego of Midoriya Izuku, his classmate in Kohai during his internship. Do they sell these anymore? No. A girl from the hero class gave it to me. She created it from her own body. She also gave me the hero Lemillion. She even made one of me. Patching the girl's babble, Mirio couldn't do much as Eri shot out of bed and headed to the closet, grabbing a box where the student could see her tuft of blonde hair and the girl's silver hair, both on the heads of two stuffed animals in their shape. That is. Attracted by another object inside that box, Mirio left Deku's stuffed animal on the table and bent down to delicately pick up the worn cape of his suit, the one he had used to cover Eri when he fought against Chisaki for the girl's protection. The young man noted the holes and cuts caused during the fight, as well as the hole from the earth stake that pierced his side, cutting the cloak itself. I kept it, Eri said, looking at that cloak that protected her when no one else would, that gave her hope and filled her with that courage that made her jump towards Deku when he tried to take it. It's very important to me. In that simple instant, all the doubts that had been on Togata Mirio's mind were completely erased. There were no doubts. There was no regret. Giving up his quirk to save that little girl's life and safety was something he would do again without a second's hesitation. He held the cloth tightly, lowering his face and brushing his forehead against it, feeling the softness of the cloak. Thank you. Because. Mirio stuffed the cloak back into the girl's item box, standing up with a smile on his lips. There was no sadness or fragility. Standing there, looking at one of the heroes who saved her, Eri could see the hero Lemillion's true smile shining with the power of 100 suns. Thanks to you, Eri, I've realized that I did the right thing by saving you. I have no regrets. Any hero would have saved you, but my frustration prevented me from seeing clearly what was in front of me. I've been an idiot, a selfish person. Giving away my quirk is the best thing I've ever done because it was to save you. I can't just take it back or undo what I've done. Mirio clenched his right hand into a fist. Looking through those huge sea blue eyes, Mirio continued calmly. I don't like being quirkless. I detest it because I can't be a recognized hero. Still, if it's to save you, Eri-chan, I'd do it again even knowing the outcome. The god Mirio spoke decisively, even more so than when he talked about saving 1,000,000 people. Since Night-Eye's funeral and the talk with Principal Nezu, he hadn't been able to see everything he'd accomplished by giving up his quirk. He'd saved Eri at the cost of his own future as a hero, his entire life built for it. He gave everything for that fragile girl, and after simply seeing how the same girl treasured his cape, he accepted that he'd do it again. He certainly felt bad. He'd thought about using Eri to gain powers again, and that was selfish of him. He couldn't let such thoughts flood his mind if he wanted to remain a hero. Nezu said that a quirk is not necessary. Mirio remembered the story the headmaster had told him. He kept it in his mind, like fuel to keep the fire that drove him to be who he was. Lemillion. But slowly, his fire seemed fragile and flickering. A dark cold wind could surely extinguish it. Million. The young man returned to the present, feeling his right pants leg begin to dampen. He lowered his head, seeing how Eri had clung tightly to his leg. I hate seeing children cry. What have you done, Togata? Behind the same young man, Professor Aizawa's face, now sans makeup and pigtails, appeared, making the teenager's nerves explode like a pressure cooker. Cold sweat began to run down his forehead, dripping down his face, and even soaking his back. Mirio tried his best not to say anything. He felt the teacher's cold, lifeless black eyes examining him, waiting for him to say something and put his foot in it so he could bandage him up and tighten it, something the ace students were starting to get used to. 10. Aizawa crouched down in front of Eri, giving her a carton of orange juice that the girl accepted, showing him her teary eyes with the movement. I'm sorry, Professor. Your speech was really strange. I didn't expect you to feel that way. Aizawa stroked the girl's head. But you're human. It's rational to feel somewhat upset and lost when you're suffering the way you have, since not only did you lose your quirk, but your mentor ultimately died from combat injuries. You can't do anything to fix that, and you blame yourself because now you can't be a hero and uphold Sir Night-Eye's legacy. It's only natural that certain selfish thoughts cross your mind. What if his Eri hadn't taken the damage because the bullet moved and you were still using your quirk? What if you had performed the action differently? What if Isaki's employee had missed? What if you had defeated him with one blow? What if you had taken the box and the gun? There are many what ifs that could have ended better or not. Maybe if you had acted differently, for example by pushing her away, she would have ended up impaled on Chisaki's stakes, Aizawa declared, sipping on her juice to refresh her lips. You can't live thinking about every action you could have taken, imagining that it would lead to the salvation of the world and the creation of a rosy world. There is no rosy world, Togata. Every action has its reaction, and any other action at that moment could have ended in a worse outcome than the one that there was. The young student remained silent, thoughtful, absorbing the teacher's words. Aizawa could be very strict within UA, something that even the teachers knew, always fearing that he would expel an entire class of students just because he didn't like them or they didn't measure up as future heroes. But he was probably the teacher with the most logic of the entire faculty. He would always tell things truthfully, he wouldn't mince words, and he would bring out the best in his students at all times. For Mirio, those words were golden. He now understood that he couldn't dwell on the past, on every action he might have taken. He had to accept what he had done, understand it, and improve upon it. Thank you, Professor Aizawa. Why? I only said what was true, Aizawa informed, finishing his juice. I didn't say it to cheer you up, I just did it because it was the logical thing to do, Togata. You're a third-year student of UA. You still have a lot to learn. Both students like Todoroki, Tokoyami or Midoriya himself, who had faced him in that test, might believe that he had already reached his full potential. Mirio knew that he still had a long way to go to be considered a real hero. Professor Aizawa had shown him. Anyway, thank you, Professor. But he didn't get a response from Aizawa. The homeroom teacher of Class A had lain down in his sleeping bag while Mirio absorbed the entire speech, closing his eyes and resting a little. Eri took advantage of this, using a marker to draw cat whiskers on the neutral teacher's face. Now, slowly filling that void with renewed strength, Mirio had to figure out how to truly become Lemillion again, how to fill the position his mentor had left vacant, and how to rise above the wall that had appeared in front of him. Next day, UA Fields. Slowly, lazily, the sun was breaking through the darkness that the night had established, sending its thin arms out across the world in an attempt to embrace it, to give it that warmth and eradicate the cold darkness that had hung over the city for hours. Sweating, panting, a young teenager with disheveled green hair ran through the academy fields, like every morning, continuing with a routine that his teacher implemented and that he maintained after entering UA in order to continue getting stronger, to be the best vessel of One for All, and finish off Shigaraki Tamura, the apprentice of the villain that Almight defeated. All for one. This young man in a dark tracksuit, drenched in sweat, was none other than Midoriya Izuku, the teenager who obtained from Almight the symbol of peace, One for All, that quirk that was destined to eradicate the darkness of its counterpart, All for One. Continuing with his routine, Midoriya kept running for the next hour as the sun rose over the horizon. Today was Saturday, so classes were only in the afternoon and were for practical purposes, improving the moves they used in the provisional driver's license exam and increasing their quirk skills. This gave the young man plenty of time to stretch out his routine a bit, also spending the morning preparing things for the cultural festival and the English homework present Mick had assigned them for the next class. Being the man he wasn't going to let them go, as his goal was to reach the top, and that could only be achieved with effort, not just in one area. He wasn't a carefree young man either, as he had always been attentive to his chores and couldn't just put aside his hard-working personality overnight. Studying. Training. He did everything in a balanced way, making time for his social life, which was clearly scarce. Midoriya. Running, towel wrapped around his body, Midoriya was soon caught up with a sweaty Togata Mirio. After a mildly motivational pep talk from Aizawa, the teenager had decided to get back in shape, regain what he lost during his time in the hospital, and improve even further. Without a quirk to fall back on, he had to use his full physical potential to excel. Togata-senpai. Ahaha, you look so energetic at this hour. Morning workout. Mirio stopped running, keeping a steady trot on the spot, while Midoriya tried to banish the confusion in his adrenaline-filled mind. I usually run around this time. Midoriya wiped his face with a towel, and Mirio stopped his jog, realizing that his kohai wasn't going to keep running. The green-haired boy had kept up the pace for a full hour. I've never seen you run before, senpai. I recently decided to get back to my training, Mirio admitted calmly, wiping the glistening sweat off his face. Slowly, the sun's rays had grown brighter and the sun appeared over the horizon. Do you have any plans for today? We're preparing a concert and a dance for the festival, Midoriya said, remembering that they would have a rehearsal that evening to continue improving their dancing, which he wasn't very good at. And I had an idea. Let's bring Eri-chan to the festival. Maybe we can make her forget about what happened with Chisaki, the first-year student declared, showing a bright face, like that of a kid in a candy store. Mirio cleared his throat. Bringing little Eri, a girl with a powerful quirk, to a place full of heroes. There were tough decisions to be made, and Professor Aizawa would probably approve. The little girl needed to get out of the hospital and find something that would finally make Chisaki's shadow leave her. I don't think it's a bad decision, the third year admitted, crossing his arms over his torso and nodding constantly. It was, in fact, a very good idea. We'll have to talk to Professor Aizawa and Principal Nezu. They'll have to deploy heroes just in case. People aren't too happy about the latest moves. Midoriya lowered his head, discouraged. Soon, the teenager felt a direct blow against his back that brought him out of his thoughts, leaving him almost face down on the ground. Don't give up, Midoriya. Heroes must stand firm in the face of adversity. It's something I've been taught recently, strengthening my own belief, Mirio said, encouraging his companion with a smile. If people don't believe in heroes, we must make them believe. Although the government is a bit annoying with its restrictions. What are you talking about? According to what a classmate told me, the teachers were forced to speak with a government representative who questioned the opening of the cultural festival, the blonde declared, scratching the back of his neck. The principal stood firm, and the festival will still go on. So get going, Midoriya. If Eri-chan's coming, you'll have to give it your all to make sure she has a good time. Mirio flashed his huge grin, stretching his lips wide. For a second, Midoriya thought his senpai's teeth were created from rays of the sun itself. He was blinded for a second and forced to blink. SC. More energy, Midoriya. And? Mirio laughed openly at the teenager's shout, and Midoriya was forced to twist his face, blushing at the presence of some general core students walking past them. This action made the third-year student laugh even more, filling the boy's ears with that laughter that wasn't cruel, but very funny and contagious. It only took Midoriya 3 seconds to follow his senpai's laughter. Both were seen as crazy. What does this training of yours consist of? Turning the conversation around again, Mirio tried to find out about his Kohai's training, hoping to increase his own physical strength. That, in fact, was his goal. Quirks were tied to the body, like another muscle. You had to train it and, at the same time, train your body. In the future, when you recovered your quirk, having trained your body more, you could use it without any difficulty and improve it much further to use against villains. If he didn't have a quirk, he would just train his body for when he got it back. I usually run a kilometer or two and then do different exercises in the academy gym. It's actually nice to have a gym so I can use other machines besides the exercises I usually do, the freckled teenager declared, recalling how he had to move refrigerators and cars, with All Might's weight added to that of the vehicle itself, which could make him reach a ton. With all those muscles, the former symbol of peace could reach kilograms without breaking a sweat, which was too much for a normal person to lift if he also had to move a heavy object. That's good. I want to join your exercises, Midoriya. The third year said, raising his hand as if he were trying to get up in front of the class. Mirio had no problem being the center of attention. Improving my body is the only thing I can do right now. And to reaffirm that, the third year made a muscular pose, marking his muscles and moving his lips so that his dazzling smile blinded his partner, and again the bearer of One for All squinted his eyes, feeling his retinas burn before that constant and fierce brightness. Oh ear. My eyes. These guys are too weird. Don't go near them. The female voice cast a shadow over the two teenagers. Mirio maintained his eccentric pose. But Midoriya lowered his head in defeat. Ha 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 ha. See. We're attracting attention. Not in a good way, the first year muttered, turning his face slightly and scratching his cheek. I was ashamed. The important thing is to be the center of attention. The more we shine, the less darkness there will be in the world, Midoriya. Because we are heroes. For his part, Midoriya wasn't entirely sure about it. It was one thing to be the center of attention, but it was quite another to be the center of attention looking like two lunatics straight out of a mental asylum. That's what they looked like to the other students who walked by, and the green-haired boy was aware of it. Too much, perhaps. Not being used to it made him feel strange, reluctant in a way. He preferred to go slightly unnoticed unless he was acting like a hero. Unfortunately, Togata-senpai, I finished my exercises today because of the meeting with my classmates. Midoriya remembered at that moment the dance practices with Mina and the others. I have to shower and have breakfast. I can't disappoint Eri-chan if she's coming. I'll take the idea to Professor Aizawa, Mirio said, patting his kohai on the shoulder with a smile of his own. He'll probably agree. I highly doubt Aizawa-sensei won't allow Eri to come to the cultural festival if it's something that could help her. And I'll be by her side the whole time. You just have to shine like the sun, Midoriya. Show Eri-chan that the world can be beautiful by acting like never before. Balling his hands into fists, his gaze filled with determination, Midoriya Izuku gave a huge nod at the third-year student's words. The cultural festival had been just a passing sight for him before, but if it was going to serve as a torch to expel Overhaul's shadow from the little girl, then he could only give it percent and beyond. Of course, Togata-senpai. I'm going to try harder than anyone else, he declared, sounding determined, full of energy that seemed endless. I'm going to make sure Eri can regain the smile she lost because of Chisaki. Mirio nodded, patting the first-year student on the shoulder, filled with his Kohai's determination. They both had to work hard so Eri could smile again, leaving behind the shadow of the Yakuza that was stalking her, chasing her even when Chisaki was defeated by the hero Deku, the greatest hero to the little girl. Only you can, Midoriya. Mirio didn't want to be made to feel less than, but he knew that only Midoriya could achieve what everyone would try in the future. The girl had somehow grown attached to the green-haired boy, and he was the one who could dispel the shadows that clung tightly to the little girl, as if they wanted to drive her back into the darkness she was finally able to leave behind. The blonde stopped patting the green-haired boy's shoulder and gave him a thumbs up. If Midoriya was working hard to save Eri from that shadow, he should do the same. He couldn't throw in the towel. Not now. Then I'll go see Professor Aizawa right now. I know he's probably sleeping, but it's for the best. I can't wait long. Mirio declared, standing at attention in front of the green-haired man. I'm running. Hi. I'm going to try my best to shine in front of Eri-chan. Thus, the two young men separated. Midoriya headed toward the first-year Class A dorm, while Mirio ran toward the main building, to the staff room where Professor Aizawa would be sleeping in his yellow sleeping bag for afternoon classes. But I couldn't wait until the afternoon. Nervous, slightly sweaty, and breathing heavily, Togata Mirio knocked loudly on the staff room door. The knocking echoed down the lonely hallway, filling the rooms adjacent to the staff room. Not even 2 seconds had passed before the door opened, revealing the broad, gigantic Vlad King standing there, fangs protruding from his mouth, his eyes sleepy as he'd been on guard duty for his group, the first-year Class B students. These students had held a small meeting that ended in the early hours, and he, as the adult in charge of the group, was forced to stay awake to keep his students under control. Young Togata. Sorry for intruding, Vlad-sensei. Is Professor Aizawa home? I need to speak to him about something urgent. Vlad blinked several times before turning away. Mirio could see the yellowish jacket of the first-year Class A homeroom teacher, stuffed with his body beneath that thin fabric that never seemed to get dirty, even though it had been through every classroom at UA, and even the various gyms the students had used during their time at the academy. Aizawa was fast asleep. Not even Blanco, one of his cats, has been able to wake him. I've had to feed his pets. He must be tired, Vlad explained, scratching the back of his neck. He spent the whole week busy with the girl, even staying in a room at the hospital to keep her company. I think Aizawa can relate to her. He lost his parents at a young age. I didn't know. I should have kept my mouth shut, Vlad muttered, slapping his forehead at his catastrophic mistake. Don't say anything, Togata. I'll go see if I can wake him up so you can talk to him. Thank you, Vlad-sensei. The third-year students stood at the entrance, watching as Vlad walked towards the sofa where Professor Aizawa was resting inside his precious jacket, so he could see how the teacher from Class B strongly shook the teacher from Class A with his enormous hand, even rocking the sofa itself. Aizawa only responded with a grunt. Aizawa. Young Togata is looking for you, explained the silver-haired teacher. Growling again, Aizawa Shoda opened his eyes slowly, as if they weighed a ton. He grunted for the third time, and when his eyes were fully open, he sat down on the couch, starting to unzip the sleeping bag he used to get up and walk over to where Mirio was. Mirio, standing at the door, just blinked at the cat pajamas the teacher was wearing. He didn't seem too bothered about his students seeing him in his sleepwear. What do you need, Togata? Today is a day off for third years, and you're here pretty early in the morning. Even first years have the morning off, the man muttered, scratching his head and trying not to yawn in the process. Is it really urgent? It's about Eri, Professor. But that name coming out of the student's mouth, Aizawa's face completely lost its leap. His eyes darkened further, and even his hair stirred a little, as if he were considering whether or not to use his quirk on him, something that wouldn't have much effect now. He was quirkless. But even so, seeing the teacher in that state was truly creepy. What happened? Midoriya and I thought about bringing Eri to the cultural festival, and we would like your approval, Professor, and Mirio bowed to the dark-haired professor. Softening his face, Aizawa let out an inaudible sigh, lightly scratching his hair. Bringing a potentially dangerous child to a crowded festival. Once upon a time, he would have refused. But little Eri was truly attached to both Midoriya and Togata, so if she was accompanied by both students, he had no problem with her being at the cultural festival. He even considered bringing her with him. He had already discussed this with the principal, and all the arrangements had been made. Togata, Aizawa spoke with his usual calmness. Mirio slowly raised his face. Eri can come to the cultural festival, but only on one non-negotiable condition. Both of you must be with her. You and Midoriya. Understood? If that's not possible, then I. Understood, Professor. Neither Midoriya nor I will leave Eri's side for a moment. I promise. We will never leave Eri-chan alone. Aizawa felt slightly. I hope so. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll get back to my special paperwork. It's a lot of work. Mirio clearly understood that the professor was going to sleep again, using his precious jacket as a bed and the sofa as his sleeping nest, so he gave a quick bow and decided to leave. He had already fulfilled his objective, and now he only needed to inform Midoriya and then Eri herself. Although this time, he would take the green-haired man with him. But where would the first-year Class A be? Stopping halfway down the hall, Mirio began to think about places Class A could use to practice. The auditorium would be used for band practices, and from what he knew, some of Class A might be there, as they were also preparing for a concert. Without a clear objective, the blond man walked briskly toward the auditorium, a smile etched on his face. They could bring Eri with them to enjoy the festival. It was definitely a boost for him, one that filled him with energy. He couldn't stop now. Leaping from the upper floor, some students jumped aside in surprise as the member of the Big Three zoomed over them, disappearing from their sight as quickly as he had appeared. It was almost like a yellow flash. What was that? Don't ask. Leaving more students behind, Togata Mirio forcefully opened the auditorium doors, generating a thunderous sound that stopped the band's rehearsals. What the buck is wrong with you, you stupid walking shit with a hair tube? Shinii. Angry, the explosive boy from Class A threw his drumsticks at the drum set, creating a cymbal crash that made his classmates react. Togata-senpai. What are you doing here? Kirishima Ijiro put down the bass he was playing to approach the third-year student. It was better for him to do it than for Bakugo to do it. Excuse me, Mirio bowed. Do you know where Midoriya is? I need to talk to him about something really urgent. They're in our class. Blushing with embarrassment, Jiro Kyoka covered the microphone. She wasn't ready for someone else to see her sing yet. She had to prepare herself for it. Thank you. And, as quickly as he arrived, Togata Mirio left the auditorium. What does he want with Midoriya? Denki asked, blinking in confusion at the third-year student's appearance. Who the buck cares? Let's rehearse, Shinii. Music soon filled the auditorium again. Meanwhile, Mirio ran through the halls of UA, passing the students like a golden flash on his way to first-year Class A. He had to tell the green-haired boy that Professor Aizawa had approved his plan to bring Eri to the cultural festival, which would definitely put a smile on his face. Using his feet to brake, Mirio soon grabbed the handle of the sliding door, opening it with a strong pull, and thus finding himself with the rest of the students in the class, preparing for their participation in the cultural festival. Annoying. Togata-senpai. Also surprised by the third-year student, the students shifted their gazes to the blonde-haired boy. Some of them had stopped in their pose, falling sharply after a few seconds, creating a chain reaction, creating a resounding echo that made Mirio laugh nervously. Sorry for the interruption. The teenager said again, giving his third or fifth bow that day. I was looking for Midoriya. Ugh. From among the fallen bodies, the freckled man's face soon appeared, showing slightly out-of-focus eyes from the blow he had received. Togata-senpai. Professor Aizawa has given the go-ahead. Some time later, Tokyo Central Hospital. Both young men stood in front of the door to room of the hospital. That room was extremely important to both boys because inside was the little girl they had initially been unable to save, but later managed to rescue from the clutches of the evil Yakuza, or more preferably from the horrendous and cruel Chisaki, the leader of the group of villains who had caused such enormous chaos with the girl. That memory would never leave Midoriya Izuku's mind. Even now, he could feel Eri clinging to him, holding on as if he were someone who had disappeared at that alley entrance. He perfectly remembered Overhaul's hollow, dark voice, filling his ears with soft words that made them act badly, because it was clear that the girl needed help and they didn't give it to her at that moment. Instead, they had to wait until later, launching themselves at the entire Yakuza and getting her out of the place. If we had acted sooner. The hand stopped the green-haired boy from thinking. Midoriya turned his head to look at Mirio beside him, his blue eyes focused on the door and a small smile on his face. Don't think about the what-ifs, Midoriya. There are many paths we could have taken, but this is what happened in the end. Perhaps rescuing her in the first place would have led to more deaths. Mirio declared, recalling his conversation with Aizawa in that room. It's better to keep your mind focused on the present. We must walk this path we took. For Sir. For Eri. She was the one affected by everything that happened with the Yakuza, but now she's with us. Don't beat yourself up, Midoriya. We must follow this path step by step, shining like the heroes we want to be, so that children like Eri can have a better future. But your quirk. Mirio's hand squeezed Midoriya's shoulder. The quirk doesn't matter, he said, looking more confident than he had been at first. It still hurt not to have a quirk, to have lost Sir in that incident. But he had to keep going for himself and for Sir. He was Lemillion, after all. And you didn't need a quirk to be a hero. Police officers didn't have one. Firefighters didn't. He could be a hero in his own way. In time, Eri would be able to give him back his powers. I can still be a hero, Midoriya. This is just a wall in front of me that I must tear down with my own hands in order to be better. The third-year student's words made Midoriya's heart warm, ignite, and begin to pound in his chest. He didn't want to believe it. But those words were just like Almight's. They were words he needed when he didn't have a quirk. They were words that even now made him want to be a better hero, a better Deku than he already was. They were the words of a hero. Thus, with both influenced by the words said by Aizawa and being transmitted by Mirio to Midoriya, the two UA students entered room of the hospital, finding little Eri sitting on her bed, with a small table with toy cups, and a Shinso Hitachi sitting in front of the girl, with a cup of tea in his hand. Shinso? Surprised, the green-haired teen looked at the general schoolboy. Shinso Hitachi was his first opponent in the final phase of the sports festival tournament. He ended up defeating him by using one for all to break his mind control. Don't say a word, Midoriya. Shinso had been forced, partially, by Aizawa to stay with Eri while he ran some errands inside the school, warning the purple-haired boy that the two boys from the hero class would appear and, if he wanted, he could leave then. Do you have another cup for me? Preempting any words Midoriya might have wanted to say, Mirio took a seat next to Shinso, obtaining from Eri a mauve cup and some imaginary tea. The tea is a bit bitter, Shinso warned, glancing sideways at the green bear. The Deku didn't like it too much. Oh, Deku? Feeling embarrassed, Midoriya looked at the dark green teddy bear, finding clear similarities to himself as he noticed that the bear seemed to be wearing his green hero outfit. The nice girl gave it to me. Eri raised her arms, showing a stuffed animal of Aizawa, Midoriya and Mirio himself, who had already seen the chibi version of Midoriya and himself in the company of the girl in stuffed animal form, so he didn't show surprise, unlike the freckled one. Nice girl. Aoi Rozu Momo Shinso spoke calmly, showing that he was being a good student of Professor Aizawa. She stopped by here a while ago, along with the girls from your class. I think the brunette saw Eri before, since she also participated in the operation. Now that I remember, Yaoi Rozu also did it in the company of the dragon heroine. She's actually had these plushies for a few days, Mirio adding, because when he came to see Eri, she already had 3 plushies, along with her worn Lemillion uniform cape. I like this tea. Deku keeps pointing out that it's too bitter. Eri, can you pass him some sugar cubes? We'll lose him if not, Shinso asked politely, sipping his tea. I like the bear. Catching his breath, Midoriya scratched his cheek uncomfortably. He didn't know how to react to a bear that was himself and that Eri herself enjoyed. He also didn't know how to react to its chibi plush form. Mirio cried, drawing attention to himself, even from the plushies. We were here for something else, weren't we, Midoriya? Right. Remembering what they had both come for, Midoriya stood in front of Eri, bending down slightly so he could face the little girl. Would you like to come with us to our school's cultural festival? There will be many stalls with sweets, stuffed animals, and you'll even be able to see Yaoi Rozu and the others. Togata-senpai and I will stay with you at all times, the young first-year student finally pointed out, briefly glancing at the member of the Big Three. Mirio had focused on finishing his tea, chatting about banal things with the teenager from the general courses. Hesitantly, Eri placed a finger under her chin, tilting her head slightly and looking into Midoriya's green eyes, with her glowing red ones. The UA teenager then looked at the horn sticking out of the girl's forehead. That's what grows when Eri is scared. There will be sweet apples. Sweet apples? Eri, dropping her head to one side, asked. Having been in captivity, she had never known about candy apples or sweets in general. At 6 years old, she still didn't know many of the things other children had enjoyed since childhood. There were also many things she didn't know, both because she was a little girl and because she had been kept away from the world by Chisaki. They're honey apples. They're really good. Mirio joined in, smiling broadly when Eri looked at him. I'll be there too, Shinso joined in. Being in the general class, he hadn't taken much of a role in the cultural festival. He had a lot of free time and accompanying Eri was the best thing he could do. Then it's okay. Eri finally agreed, showing her bright eyes full of joy. Midoriya was the first to smile, followed by the general courses student, although he did so imperceptibly, and the last was Mirio himself, who only widened the smile he had shown on his lips. Mirio, Shinso got out of bed, placing the cup on the silver tray. Can we talk? Sure. Midoriya, take care of Eri, the third year asked, passing his cup to the freckled boy as he stood up. We'll be right back. Bye, Togata-senpai. Okay. So, Mirio left the room, followed by Shinso. Aizawa's apprentice closed the door behind him, trying to keep the words they were about to share from reaching Midoriya's ears, as the boy would probably be too worried if he found out. I heard about your condition. Well, the whole school already knows, the man with the messy purple hair began, looking directly into the blonde's immense blue eyes. Without a quirk, you practically can't take over your mentor's agency or work as a hero freely, right? Even so, I'm not going to give up. Shinso Mirio stopped the first-year student from saying anything more. No matter how much time passes, I'll still wait to regain my quirk and do my job as a hero. I owe it to Sir and all those who stood by me, supporting me. That's not what I meant, the boy replied. Is a quirk necessary to be a hero? No. We're superheroes, but heroes have existed for years, before quirks. Our gifts are just another tool in the hero's work. Another item is the uniform and the various gadgets that companies and colleagues in the support department give us. Shinso scratched the back of his neck, thinking about his new equipment that he would use sooner rather than later, all from his support colleagues. They can probably give you something. You don't necessarily need a quirk to fight, you just need. Emulate him. The blonde with the pompadour completed, crossing his arms over his torso. Over time, many of the heroes had been forced to rely on the devices various companies created for them. Endeavor kept his suit upgraded so he could push his flames beyond their limits. Kamui Woods wore a fireproof suit, thus preventing him from getting burned too much in a battle against the flames. The students, being those with the least control over their quirks, relied heavily on the artifacts their support teammates created for them. Midoriya was a clear example, improving his suit based on the improvement in his own quirk, reinforcing his boots to increase the damage of his kicks with shoot style, a new modality that the first year created to not rely on his injured arms, and making the difference between himself and Almight, whom he had been blatantly copying until the boy went his own way. You could contact a third year from the support department and improve your suit to emulate your quirk or add some gadgets so you can fight. Just because you've lost your quirk doesn't mean you can't fight, Shinso said. He could only mentally control his enemies, and Aizawa relied on his eyes to block out his opponent's quirks. They weren't practically hero quirks as such, since they didn't contain devastating force or could set a city on fire. Both were forced to physically fight their opponents at all times, and even with their quirks, they were the closest thing to a quirkless person that could exist in today's society. There were even people with less noticeable quirks than theirs, and now they'd be walking the streets, and no one would ever be able to see that they had a quirk, passing for people without a quirk. At least, that's the advice I can give you if you're going to continue with your plan. I doubt your quirk's return will happen anytime soon. Maybe even in a year. It's something I've already accepted, Mirio admitted, clenching his hands tightly. He knew that even if Eri was trained, it wouldn't be the time when she could give him back his powers, and until then, he wasn't going to sit idly by. Training physically and mentally was something he would do, following Midoriya's example. But now, with the idea of creating a suit that would help him fight, he could even keep Lemillion on the streets for a while. He had a combat style and didn't need his quirk to fight. The only thing he needed to increase was his own speed, reflexes, and agility to compensate for his lack of quirk. Without his quirk, he was vulnerable to physical blows and all kinds of attacks, so his speed was now paramount. But taking your words at face value, Shinso, I'm going to create a suit that will allow me to fight. I'm going to revive Lemillion from the ashes so I can save 1,000,000 people. Shinso just smiled slightly. At night, UA, third-year support course class. Inside one of the third-year support corps students' workshops, one of the members sat on a stool, covering her face with a mask, as she continued to soldier on. She had started on a truly important project, the most important she'd undertaken since joining UA, and if she managed to finish it, she'd probably land a good job at one of the major hero agencies. Or at least, that's what she hoped and desired with all her might. Letting out a sigh, the girl pulled the welding machine away from the apparatus, removing the mask from her face to reveal lightly tanned skin, with huge green eyes and a piercing on the right side of her nose. Messy and punk style, her black hair with red tips fell slightly over her forehead, brushed to the right, leaving the left side completely shaved. Over her black AC/DC t-shirt, she wore a mechanic's jumpsuit, revealing her two thin tanned arms. You can come in if you want. I'm going to take a break, she spoke calmly, stretching after placing the mask on the table, next to a technological glove she had created, trying to recreate impulses to create a powerful slingshot that would disable any gadgets the villains carried, or even the vehicles they used for escapes. I'm going to get some coffee. I have a good, long night ahead of me. Do you want some? Or would you prefer a bowl of ramen? Emerging from the shadows, embarrassed at having been caught, Togata Mirio walked over to the teenager's workbench, admiring the blueprints she had on it, along with the various parts and tools she was using to assemble the gadgets heroes would use in the future. This looks interesting, the teenager said, as the girl got up from her seat and went to a refrigerator away from the work area. Although it didn't seem like it, this was her private workshop. Few students, whether from the hero or support classes, passed by workshop number, which she finished all to herself. You want to recreate impulses to disable villain weapons or vehicles. I see it could also be used to disable people with quirks linked to electricity or electromagnetic fields. Are you a techie now too, Mirio? The girl asked mockingly. She bent down, opened the fridge, and grabbed a bowl of instant ramen, preparing to heat it up into coffee for herself. I didn't expect you to actually be interested in this stuff. Hey. Anything related to heroes is of more than personal interest to me. The young man declared, fervently pointing at the teenager. And you know it. Since when does an EMP wave have anything to do with heroes? Since when does a glove that can generate one have anything to do with heroes? Since when does making gadgets have anything to do with heroes? Question by question, the girl's mocking smile widened, waiting for some reaction from the teenager who admired her work. She really didn't expect the boy to know about EMP waves and how to use them, but she shouldn't have been too surprised either. Mirio was always one of the star students, even when he couldn't use his quirk properly. Since I want this glove on my suit. Mirio gave the answer with energy, his smile shining on his lips and watching as the girl's eyes opened wide. Your outfit? Hesitantly, the girl took the lukewarm bowl of ramen and walked over to the table, leaving the food in front of the blonde, along with a pair of wooden chopsticks. You don't have a quirk. And that's why I'm here, Mirio replied, his huge smile never fading. I want you to make me a new suit. You don't have a quirk. You can replicate my quirk, he declared, confident in his words, because after all, it had been that girl who created his suit that fit his permeability quirk. You're the only one who could create a suit that recreates my quirk. Do you think I'm God? No, but you're smart enough to recreate a quirk in a full suit, Mirio declared, slurping on some of his ramen noodles. You have intelligence. I'm not very smart in these matters. I prefer to let myself be guided in battle. You, on the other hand, were born with a particular gift to be here. I don't even have a quirk, Mirio, she declared, frowning at his flattery, trying to somehow hide her flushed cheeks from him. You're asking too much. I can't give you an outfit that can recreate your quirk. Are you sure about that? Mirio smiled. You were able to create my current costume with strands of my hair. Perhaps by taking the parts from the old costume, you can replicate my quirk, since my DNA with my quirk should still be in those strands. You have everything you need to try at least. Sipping from her cup, the girl remained silent for the next 90 seconds. If she completed her current assignment, she might get good grades. But if she fulfilled her classmate's request, she would actually have a clear path to a good position at a reputable company or some hero agency, even signing government contracts. It was a very good opportunity, but very complicated to pull off. Anyway, since when did I care about the difficulty of a job? It was also impossible to create Mirio's suit like Lemillion, and I had succeeded, he reminded himself, frowning slightly as he put his neurons to work. If I can get the old suit to activate Mirio's permeability, I'll be able to transfer it to a new suit that can make him intangible while inside it. But it's a complex process, and all the resources involved are really expensive. I suppose Dad can spare a little from his checkbook. Letting out a sigh, the girl placed her completely empty cup on the table, covering the current plans. Now she could go all night without sleeping. It wasn't anything new to her either. Long, sleepless nights had been her companions in high school, and now they followed her in UA and surely in her time as a company employee. It's not something I can guarantee, Mirio, she declared, looking down at her hand surrounding the coffee cup. I don't know how I managed to create your current costume. I still believe it was just a fluke. And what you're asking of me is much more complicated. Using your old costume, reactivating your quirk in the costume itself, and transferring it to a new costume and making it functional will be a huge waste of money and time. And you know my final project is this year, since it's the last one we'll be taking at UA. I know I'm asking too much of you, that this might just be a small attempt to hold on to Lemillion, but I can't just stand idly by. I want to help people. There are probably more girls like Eri out there who need someone to help them. And I want to be that someone. Remembering how Chisaki held Eri captive, how he constantly hurt her, and how I left her with him when he could have rescued her, it makes my blood boil. The girl sighed again. She glanced at the third-year student, noticing how he had tightly closed his hands into fists. His face was wrinkled in a real grimace of irritation and anger, a gesture she rarely saw from Mirio. In fact, no matter how hard she tried to remember, she couldn't find any other time when the boy had shown real annoyance. He had always kept a smile on his face, showing everyone that he was a sun shining in the darkness and that he wouldn't leave no matter what. This attitude was what led her to secretly admire him, watching how Mirio had grown as a hero and a person since entering UA. Ah, you really are persistent in your own way. She slammed her coffee cup on the table, letting out another sigh and brushing strands of hair away from her face. You're very annoying, Mirio. I just want to save people, even if I have to wear a suit to do it, he replied, giving one of his smiles, completely erasing the trace of anger from his features. Just recreating your quirk will cost millions, she declared, leaning back, forcing the back of her chair to shift and allowing her to stare up at the workshop ceiling. What else do you want in this super suit of yours, Mirio? The more stuff you put in it, the more expensive it will be, and the harder it will be to get it validated. You know the paperwork is. That doesn't interest me, Mirio cut off the girl's words, dismissing what she had said with a dismissive gesture. I know your father can do it much faster. So you contacted me about my father, huh? She demanded, feigning annoyance. Mirio blinked. What? No. You know what, ouch. The girl punched him, smiling amusedly. I knew it, silly, she declared, calming her friend a little. I know you come to me for help. You've been doing it for years. Of course. You're the smart one, Mirio declared. But really. This is going to be very complicated. We're not talking about a booster for your permeability quirk, but rather we'll be trying to recreate it. You know, many scientists have tried this with Almight's quirk. And no one has ever been able to recreate the full strength of the former symbol of peace. They were able to create an arm that could generate 10% of the force, but nothing more. Then this is going to be much easier, Mirio assured, giving a thumbs up with a smile. You're the smartest. With an IQ of 200, I don't think anyone can surpass you. You'll be able to recreate my quirk so I can continue being Lemillion. I trust you, Valyria. Puffing out her cheeks, Valyria Connors looked away. The girl, an elite student in the United States, had transferred to UA at the request of the principal himself, who had given her a full scholarship so she could study with them. Seeing the enormous opportunity to learn other methods, the girl accepted, passing up the chance to learn alongside Dave Shield, the most famous inventor of gadgets and equipment for heroes, a decision that many questioned. But for Valyria herself, it was an opportunity. She wouldn't learn from the best, but she wouldn't be tied to his teaching style either, and she would create her own style when it came to invention. And if he achieved that, he would really be above Shield. Arg. I hate it when you give that smile, Mirio. I can't deny you anything when you truly put your trust in me, she declared, pulling her hair, because she really couldn't refuse her friend's request now. He had asked her for an outfit that recreated the quirk, and she would have to do it no matter the cost. Luckily, for both her and Mirio, the funds were something they didn't have to worry about. You're lucky my father likes you. Hahaha. Really? He'll be the one putting up the money for your crazy project, Togata, she pointed out, stabbing the third-year hero student's chest with her finger. Millions. I hope you can pay them back. Don't let us down. Have I ever done it? Luckily for you, no. Valyria stood up again, walking to the fridge for the second time. She'd need a lot more caffeine if she was going to be busy with the project. What did you think about for the costume? A red cape. Yep. It's the cape I used to save Eri-chan, Mirio declared, showing the teenager the cape Eri had saved. The girl had returned it to him, and he planned to use it with his new and improved outfit. Maybe something like the original outfit. Gold, white, and red, mostly. I had thought of something more like black and gold, dear Mirio, she declared, giving a sly smile. Since you won't be like your old self, but a new Lemillion for a while. Black and gold will certainly be perfect. I'll also have to implement a helmet so you can make your head intangible, she dictated, now sitting in front of her companion. Otherwise, it would be a vulnerable part for you and a clear target for your enemies. And with how foolish you are, you'll probably end up dead in the second or third raid. Understand? I've been thinking of implementing several of my personal projects into your suit. Magnetic boots that reverse gravity and allow you to stick to walls. Gloves capable of recreating EMP waves to deal with villain weaponry. Even some ninja smoke bombs you can scatter around the place for escape or ambush, never heard. Those are some of the gadgets I'll make for you to use freely in battles against villains, plus all the behind-the-scenes work that will be done to deal with those quirks that are impossible for you alone. This could already be a partnership between a hero and his henchman. You're not my henchman, he grumbled softly. I'm practically your partner now. You got me mixed up in all this, and I highly doubt the principal or the faculty would let you act this way. Someone's gotta watch your back, my good friend Mirio. How do you plan to do it? Will you pretend to be me whenever I'm away? He inquired, smiling somewhat mockingly. Valyria's green eyes remained impassive, and Mirio realized he'd figured out his classmate's plan. She really was going to impersonate him when she wasn't at the academy. No. It's something simple for me, Valyria assured, a triumphant smile on her lips. I have projects that will help me in this task. A technological mask that will change my face to yours. A voice modulator. A projection creator. I've waited a long time for this, Mirio. Now I can use all my projects in this suicidal project of yours. I created a monster. My parents basically did it when they had Hex at that party, she retorted, covering her face with her coffee cup, while Togata Mirio spat out some noodles because of what she mentioned. I hope you don't use it for your nocturnal perversions now, Mirio. You're a monster. Talk to my parents. They created me, she pointed out again, hiding her smile at the massive blush on the blonde teen's face. Arg, not again. Joking aside, the girl's voice slowly lowered its pitch. How are you going to do it? Are you just going to jump on any villain? I highly doubt the pro heroes and the police will let you have your way. It's too risky. I still have my license. The one that has your face, name, and school on it, she replied, sighing heavily. I'll have to hack into the hero registry systems and switch your license with someone else's so you can pass for him, while Togata Mirio is still just another Quirkless. Can you do that? What's the deal? I can replicate your quirk on a suit, but I can't hack a government department. Sometimes you should think before you speak, idiot. I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm kind of full of energy right now. I should get on with this project as soon as possible and finish it as soon as possible, Valyria declared, massaging her neck. You're Togata Mirio, Lemillion. Your ass is way too restless when someone's in danger. You're trouble on two legs. That offends me, the boy muttered, putting his chopsticks down in his ramen bowl. I'm just trying to do my best as a hero. I can't stand by and watch people get hurt, no matter who they are. It's not something I can allow. And that's why you jumped in to save that little girl, the teenager fiddled with a screwdriver, looking into her friend's downcast eyes. The will of a hero. Those who, without thinking, move to save people in danger. The greatest heroes began their days with a step forward, running into danger, even before showing up at a hero academy. It's something my father always told me as a child when I saw Almight saving people. And you, Togata Mirio, meet all those characteristics. You are a carbon copy of Almight himself. Your legs will move on their own when your eyes see a person in danger. It's a fact. And even without a quirk, it's what you'll do, Valyria smiled. One day, without a suit, without a quirk, you will walk down the street and see someone in danger, being assaulted, beaten, almost raped, and your legs will move, your arm will retract, and your energetic scream will make the criminal stop for a few seconds. Seconds in which your fist will connect with his face, and you will send him to the cold ground with that movement. That is what you will do, whether or not you have the suit that recreates your quirk, and whether or not you have permission from the same government. That is how you operate, Togata Mirio. You know me too well, Mirio smiled, keeping his face slightly lowered, staring at the chopsticks in the empty ramen bowl. He sighed and raised his face. Maybe too well. I'm observant and intelligent, Mirio. It's natural for me to pick up on your small nuances and combine them into who you truly are. Though they're not small at all, even the most incompetent could figure out who Togata Mirio is and who he manifests when he takes on the mantle of Lemillion. After a brief silence between them, Mirio finally broke it by standing up from the seat he'd been occupying for that hour in the early morning. It was already close to 3, and if he didn't get some rest, he probably wouldn't be able to take the exercises with Midoriya in the morning. Thank you for listening to my request, Valyria, he said. His tone of voice became soft, calm, showing real gratitude. As a student and being in a critical situation, he knew that no one within the faculty would listen to him, and it was unlikely the director would support his project, even after those words he addressed to him in his office. The entire council would fall on him if he risked a student's life. You've helped me too much. I'll just create a suit that will kick the butts of crazy villains, Mirio. It's no big deal, she said, laughing gruffly. You're the true hero the world needs. Remember that, for people need those bright smiles of yours. Just don't get too bright. Sometimes you blind me at night and then it takes me hours to focus again, okay? Oh. And use your head a little, be less emotional in your future confrontations, but accept the paths you've taken. You are Lemillion, after all. Mirio just smiled at those sincere words. UA Cultural Festival. Time passed calmly, and the Cultural Festival of Japan's famed UA Academy was underway. The Hero Academy grounds were filled with reporters, pro-heroes, visitors, and families of students and teachers, with small children running through the hallways and rummaging through the stands set up outside, waiting for the students to begin their festival projects. At the entrance to the academy, far from UA's uniform, Togata Mirio waited, his hands in his jacket pockets and a smile on his face. Today, Eri was leaving the hospital to attend the festival, and she witnessed Midoriya's efforts to give her the best experience she could take from the event. It was a good thing Professor Aizawa had given them permission so the little girl could enjoy the event. Perhaps with a smile, Eri could partially forget the darkness that had accompanied her for most of her life. Mirio shook his head slightly. This wasn't the time to think about Chisaki or what Eri had suffered. These were events that were present for both her and those who rescued her. But today was a day to celebrate and rest. Eat some sweets and buy more plushies. The first-year Class A vice president would probably give Eri more plushies, all of her favorite heroes and people. They would have to carry their stuffed animals back to the hospital room. I must rest too. Massaging his neck a little, the teenager thought about all the nights he spent in the workshop with Valyria, reassembling parts of her previous suit and searching for a way to reactivate its permeability using its fibers so he could create his new suit, recreating his quirk completely. It wasn't easy, nor was it easy. They still hadn't figured out how to carry out their plan or whether it was actually viable. There was a greater chance of failure than success, and that's why his friend had come up with a plan B. Taking his old suit and reconstructing it, he and Valyria had implemented various gadgets into the suit, which the girl had allowed him to use, even though they were still being tested. One such gadget was the magnetism boots, somehow creating a magnetic field that reversed gravity and allowed him to walk on walls like a spider. Aside from the boots, which he had used in the gamma field, Valyria had given him what she called the shield cloak, a cape that, when stretched with a movement, could act as a shield. It had been created from a hard impenetrable material, serving as protection against gunfire and worse. It had yet to be tested. What he did have in his hands was his hero license. His name was now Nakamura Kinoshita, a young hero who had graduated from the Western Academy. Shiketsu and worked at a small hero agency. To be honest, she really is good. Mirio had watched her hack into the government's hero records, entering his alias information and creating a history of the academy itself. Only another expert hacker could have spotted the errors, and not even a teacher could have discerned whether Nakamura Kinoshita actually existed or not, and whether or not he had actually gone through Shiketsu. He was practically two completely different people now, both of them coexisting in real life, which would be much more stressful and tiring for himself, while trying to work as a hero as well, all behind Yue and his companions' backs. I'm sorry, Tamaki, Nijire. But I can't let Lemillion be buried yet. Despite his friendship with the other two members of the Big Three, Mirio hadn't deigned to involve them in his plans. He couldn't bear to see their permits revoked and possibly expelled from the academy if he was found out. He also wouldn't have wanted to involve Valyria in this crazy scheme. But she was the only one he could trust to carry out his plan, and the only one who could actually create the suit he currently needed, and she had agreed to it. Perhaps she was just as crazy as he was. Mirio let out a sigh. His mind raced with the retaliation the principal and teachers would unleash on them if they were discovered. They were walking on thin ice that would shatter with one misstep. And yet she. This morning, just before leaving home, he'd received a call from Valyria telling him about a small breakthrough. After some minor tests, she'd managed to make one of the gloves on the new suit intangible for a period of 1 second, almost imperceptible. If she hadn't been really attentive, it could probably have passed as a result of lack of sleep. He's trying too hard. The sound of tires rolling on the asphalt and a vehicle coming to a stop brought the third-year student out of his thoughts. Blinking, Mirio stared at the black car that had stopped 3 meters away from him. Looking closely, he could see Aizawa was sitting in the driver's seat, wearing a suit and his hair tied in a ponytail, as if he were going to some kind of interview or meeting. Only in those situations did the first-year Class A homeroom teacher truly dress up. Before the teenager could take a step forward, one of the rear doors opened and a girl with light blue hair stepped out of the back of the vehicle. Million. The teenager smiled at the little girl's scream. Happy, Eri ran toward one of her favorite heroes and fearlessly hugged him. This gesture forced the third year to bend down, allowing him to take the little girl in his arm and let Eri's thin arms wrap around his neck lightly, with little force. You're so energetic, Eri-chan, the teenager whispered once they separated. Mirio remained at the girl's eye level, looking into those bright red eyes. Are you ready for the cultural festival? I heard Midoriya's class is planning an opening concert. Eri nodded, giving a huge nod when she heard the name of her favorite green hero. I'm ready for the festival. She's really full of energy today, Shinso admitted, standing next to the two. And Midoriya. I thought he'd greet Eri at the entrance with you. No. He'll be busy with his classmates, preparing for the dance demonstration and the concert. It's going to be a joint effort and Midoriya has worked hard, especially for you, Eri-chan, Mirio admitted, gently stroking the girl's head. He hopes you have a great time at the concert. They'll even have lights like those old-fashioned party balls. Party balls? Yes. They're glowing balls they use on dance floors. Well, they used to use them before, Mirio informed her, taking the little girl's hand and starting to walk. I think one of their classmates can generate lightning from his belly button or something, and with that, they've created a party ball. With one of the students. Raising an eyebrow, Shinso looked puzzled at the blonde's comment. Had they really used a student as a human party ball, or was it some kind of exaggeration created by Mirio himself? Yeah. It's not a human ball, though, Mirio explained, as if he were a teacher. The three of them had begun to make their way into the booths that different classes had set up for the festival. They use the boy's quirk to illuminate the inside of the ball, and they spin it around, projecting light all over the stage. That makes more sense, Shinso agreed, scratching the back of his neck. A lot of people were starting to file into the auditorium. It's going to be a little cramped. And I don't like being cramped, if I'm honest. With your quirk, you could control them, Eri said, remembering how Shinso controlled one of the nurses to play with them. You can do it here. Eri, being the embodiment of reason, Mirio modulated his voice to create a deep commanding tone, almost similar to the one Professor Aizawa used when he wanted to explain something important. Quirks shouldn't be used for play. We can't use them for trivial things, but to do good for society. That's what separates us from heroes and villains. If we used our quirks for our own benefit, we'd be selfish and showing a side that heroes can't show. As students, we must be responsible with the use of our powers. Mirio looked straight at Shinso. What? You're breaking the law by creating a suit so you can continue being a hero, the purple-haired teenager muttered, as if it were just any old thing. That's different. You're following your selfish dream of becoming a hero who will save a million people. If we're going by words, you're definitely a villain these days, the purple-haired boy declared calmly, entering the auditorium and being followed by the third year and the little girl. It's all about perspective. Quirks can be used to make everyday tasks more enjoyable. As long as they don't harm other people. When a quirk is used to harm innocent people, then we could say that person is a villain. If I use my brainwashing quirk to demonstrate it to a little girl, that doesn't make me a villain. Ugh. You have a good point there, the blonde teenager admitted, letting out a sigh. Still, Eri, it's not right to use a quirk for one's own benefit. With great power comes great responsibility. Did you get that from a religious pamphlet? Shinso narrowed his eyes at the blonde teenager. I hate churches. No. Well, stop saying things like that. You make me nervous, the boy declared. It was then that the concert began, with force and rhythm. Mirio took Eri in his arms. The girl's eyes opened wide, flooded by the stage lights and those escaping from the party ball, as Mirio himself called it before entering the auditorium. Feeling Eri's arms rise up at the power of the first-year girl's voice and the drum beats, Mirio could only smile, as did Midoriya from the stage. Both teenagers caught sight of Chisaki's shadow fading in the new light and, imperceptibly to both of them, let out an inaudible sigh, which was drowned out by Bakugo's explosive cymbal crashes. But that simple act, with a simple concert, Eri was finally free from the shadow that had held her back even when Chisaki himself had been defeated. And that day had begun with a victory for them. From then on, Eri could only live a calm and peaceful life. It was Paul. And then Fuush. And Fuush. Eri, excited, moved around after the concert, striking poses while Mirio laughed happily, Shinso scratched his neck, and Midoriya tried to comprehend all the words. The green-haired boy was sure Jiro would be embarrassed by the little girl's praise because it was truly abundant and constant. And it didn't seem like she'd tire of it anytime soon. Being a little girl and with that kind of energy, Eri would be jumping, screaming, and making movements for the next few hours if she wasn't stopped. They weren't really going to do it either. It was definitely a good concert, Shinso admitted, not wanting to say too much. He wasn't going to be as loose as Eri, letting it all go that it had been great. He'd probably take that to the grave. What do we do now? With the concert over, what other stands are there worth checking out? They've set up a candy stand a little further down, almost at the entrance, Midoriya declared, pointing behind them. They're also about to hold the contest for the most beautiful girl in UA. I think Nijire said something about participating in said contest to beat her senpai or something. I wasn't paying too much attention. Tamaki was kicking herself for failing an English test, Mirio admitted, cupping his chin and striking a thoughtful pose. He did remember hearing Nijire talk about said contest, but he couldn't quite place when she had done it or whether or not she was actually going to participate. Let's go. Let's go. Eri jumped, taking Midoriya's hand and pulling him along, forcing Mirio and Shinso to move behind them, passing between the adults, teenagers and children in front of them. Mirio could only laugh as he was forced to spin around quickly, dodging a regular student with the movement. Eri was actually moving quickly in front of them, dragging the first year behind her like there was no tomorrow, as if someone were chasing them, even though they were really just going to observe Nijire before the beauty pageant. Should we run? Behind Mirio, Shinso spoke with his usual neutrality, dodging anyone who got in his way like a third year. The boy wasn't bothered or amused by the situation. He felt neutral about it, not understanding why they should run. Were they late? The concert had ended a few minutes ago, and there was still plenty of time until the beauty pageant, right? Well, it's Eri who isn't leading, Mirio declared, understanding like Shinso that they didn't need to rush to get to the event. They'd have plenty of room and there were still a few minutes left until the start. But I guess there's nothing we can do. Shinso clearly disagreed. Using his brainwashing quirk, they could control Eri, or at least the people around her, opening a wide path for themselves. He already had 7 people he was forced to dodge, nearly killing himself with the unusual movement he was performing. Don't even think about controlling people, Mirio said, looking at Shinso with his blue eyes narrowed. I'm watching you. And he moved his fingers, pointing first at his eyes and then at Shinso's. The general core student blinked, trying to understand the upperclassman's attitude, but without really being able to understand it very well. Perhaps it was genetic and inexplicable. I understand, the teenager murmured, not wanting to argue with the older man, focusing again on the people in front of him, avoiding getting caught up in a crowd. How much longer? I think it's the building across the street, Midoriya said, shouting over the crowd. The freckled man was being dragged straight toward the building. He could barely feel his arm anymore, and if they didn't stop soon, he'd end up with it ripped from his body. There isn't much left. Shinso breathed a sigh of relief. He wasn't too used to running. Unlike the members of the hero class, he didn't have classes that required him to increase his physique through sports or quirk training. His stamina wasn't particularly high, and at the sports festival, he relied on his quirk to reach the finals, forcing many other young men to drop out and leave him the spot. His gift was actually useful in certain circumstances. In a kidnapping, he could be the one in charge of conducting the negotiations and ultimately force the villain to surrender. Or so Aizawa pointed out in his theoretical classes as he was applying to enter the hero class, one of the 2 classes. He still had training ahead of him. Cuidado, Shinso. The purple-haired boy stopped in his tracks. Another member of the general classes had cut him off, separating him from Mirio and the others. The 3rd year stopped a few steps away and looked back, observing how Shinso had fallen behind in the stampede of students that passed between them. That's really crowded, the boy murmured, approaching the blonde with slow steps, now more cautious. I didn't expect the business course to be able to accomplish all this in conjunction with the general courses. Hahaha. Wearing Ue Mirio raised his finger with a smile. Of course the comrades would do a great job. Everyone has worked so hard and these are the fruits of their labor. Mirio was speaking sincerely. He rarely used any kind of mask to hide his intentions, and they could be counted on one hand. However, creating a suit and becoming a hero again could be considered hiding his intentions. Shall we continue? We're a bit far from Midoriya and Eri. I don't want to see Midoriya get crushed by a mob of people carrying the girl with him. Aizawa would eat him like an orc eating a cow, Shinso declared. It would be a shame if Aizawa scolded him. Especially since Nijire is waiting for our encouragement. Come on, Shinso. Let's get this over with. Mirio. Freckled boy. Dark circled boy. Eri-chan. When the 4 finally arrived at the dressing rooms, they were greeted by a Nijire wrapped in a blue silk dress, with her huge smile and hair a Saiyan waterfall. Surprisingly, Eri hugged the 3rd-year teenager, being reciprocated by the same girl while she remained attentive to Mirio's eyes. Yo, Nijire. You look really beautiful in that outfit. You'll definitely win today. Mirio admitted, giving his huge smile and a fierce thumbs up. Haggard boy. Shinso scratched the back of his neck, swaying his hair as he absorbed the 3rd-year student's words, trying really hard not to feel offended. For his part, being Midoriya, the green-haired boy kept his face slightly flushed with embarrassment, trying not to say anything inappropriate in front of the 3rd-year student's body. Mirio hadn't lied. Heido Nijire was truly beautiful, enhancing her blue eyes and cyan hair with that soft and elegant blue suit that clung to the girl's body as if it were hugging it, making her curves slightly visible to everyone in the room. Without a doubt, a single gesture and many would blush at the girl's beauty. How have you been, Eri-chan? Ignoring the leering glances of some adults, both male and female, Nijire remained focused on the girl, holding her in her arms and giving her one of her smiles. Okay. I saw Izuku's classmates' concert. It was Fuea. And then Fuush. And Fruish. With Eri making her moves, Nijire could only chuckle lightly at the girl's ease. It was adorable. As a 3rd-year student of the hero course, she was happy to see the girl's smile on her lips. After everything she'd been through with her and the Yakuza, seeing her smile was a relief for any hero who had participated in the operation. She did so as a hero from Tatsuma Ryuko's agency, participating as the reserve team during the operation against the Yakuza. Seeing Eri smile as if she wasn't controlled by that man made her feel her heart swell with energy. I'm glad you enjoyed the concert, Eri-chan. Nijire stroked the girl's head and stood up. Her dress fluttered slightly with the movement, revealing a hint of her fair skin. I hope you like the beauty pageant as well. And? The boy smiled slightly at the little girl's energetic tone. Shinso only showed a slight grimace on his face, a clear indication of his resemblance to Professor Aizawa, who didn't usually smile. While Midoriya smiled somewhat nervously with a huge blush on his cheeks, Mirio smiled widely, giving a thumbs up for the umpteenth time that day. It looked like a beacon of positivity. "You're going to win, Nijire," the blonde declared, cheering on his best friend. He was sure Hato Nijire would win the beauty contest at the cultural festival, as if she were Lemillion, the hero who would save a million people with that huge smile on her face. Thanks to Valyria, his dream was still alive. "We'll be cheering you on. Tamaki will be doing it from home. You know he's not good in big crowds like this, and it's best if he doesn't come. He's not too familiar with the feeling." Well. "I hope that, next time, Tamaki will come," she said, somewhat discouraged by the absence of one of her friends. To her, both Mirio and Tamaki were everything. They had known each other since the first year and had been together for a long time, going on endless adventures. It really didn't sit well with her that one of them was missing her parade, but she couldn't put too much pressure on Tamaki. "Cheer me on twice as hard. For Tamaki." And? The teens laughed at Eri's shout as the girl seemed overly energetic and willing to give her all to cheer Nijire up. And it was something the girl was going to do no matter what, as Nijire was one of her favorite heroes. Taking a deep breath, Shinso finally spoke. They'd spent too many minutes in the dressing room distracting the contestants. It was better to get out and get ready for the show. "We're leaving," the boy declared, massaging his neck with his right hand. "See you, Nijire-san." "Are we leaving now?" Accepting Shinso's hand, Eri showed a cute pout. "And Nijire-san. Why, you're sure to win." "Thank you, Midoriya." Finally, the two members of the Big Three stood facing each other. Before the talkative Nijire could say anything, she felt her partner's hand squeeze her shoulders. "You can do it. Tamaki and I will always be behind you, ready to pick you up if you fall." With those words, Togata Mirio left the locker room, leaving his teammate to think about those words. The cultural festival was to continue. 1 week later. Downtown Shinjuku. But the fall of All Might and the dissolution of the 8 precepts of death along with the Yakuza, crime had been slowly growing in Japan, under the shadows, preparing to bring down the society that had been built around heroes and quirks, thereby creating a false sense of security that at any moment could be completely destroyed like a simple glass. With his fall, All for One opened the door for all those villains interested in power, willing to seize it and control the world. Few were capable. Chisaki was defeated before he could begin, and Shigaraki Tamura wasn't fully prepared to take over the role his master left behind. But there were others who were willing to do anything. Careful. Ham. Crack. On one of Shinjuku's streets, a huge iron beam fell from the top of a building under construction, crushing a truck used by the construction company to transport materials. The vehicle was completely split in half, exploding in a voracious blaze that generated morbid astonishment among passers-by. They didn't seem to want to move, to stop filming with their phones. "Step aside." Wahahahaha. At the shout of the local hero and the shrill laughter of the villains, the passers-by began to move, giving more space to both. The dust settled, revealing the figure of the villain before the eyes of the witnesses. A red scarf swayed in the wind. White bandages covered his body. Countless bladed weapons were strapped across his torso and limbs. "Damn. Oh, come on," the villain grinned broadly, showing sharp teeth. "Don't give me some false hero evangelical speech. Words are sometimes more powerful than actions, and that villain was proof of that." After the Hosu incident, where no innocent heroes were involved, someone else was there and left words that resonated in the hearts of many people, whether civilians, heroes, or villains. Stain the hero killer. With his words before he collapsed, many villains ended up following the League of Villains. Others, however, formed their own groups to deal with the heroes. And now, with the fall of All Might, everything that had been hidden was revealed to the world. Rash. With the flick of a switch, the man drew a long katana with a blade as gray as smoke itself. Baring his teeth in a ferocious grin, the villain launched himself at the hero with surprising speed. Love. People's eyes widened as the villain's blade pierced the hero's chest, leaving the man completely paralyzed, his torso impaled and his lungs filling with blood. Cough. Falling to his knees, the pro-hero spat blood onto the pavement. The villain calmly grasped the handle of his katana, pressing his foot against the false hero's back, keeping him glued to the ground, creating a huge pool of blood. "Today is your last day, false hero. The time has come for those false heroes to pay for their actions." And, before the eyes of dozens of people and cameras, the bandaged man pierced the hero's back with his sword. He didn't blink. His hands didn't tremble. His dark eyes showed only a coldness that was hardly illuminating to those watching. Twisting the katana, with a sound of slicing flesh and cloth, the villain withdrew his weapon and began to walk slowly, hearing the flashes of cell phone cameras, feeling people gasp as he passed in front of them. He swung his sword. Drops of blood splattered the pavement and people moved aside, creating a direct path for him toward another group of heroes and police officers. "Stop. Drop your weapons and..." Boom. The second he gave the first command, police cars exploded, surrounding the officers in flames, creating chaos that only benefited the villain. With his dark eyes fixed on the heroes present, the man gripped his weapon tightly and ran through the flames against another of the pro-heroes, the one right in front of him. Brack. Oh. Police and heroes alike watched as the villain's sword pierced the local hero's chest, piercing his heart completely in a second. A blink of an eye and any of them would have missed the action. I will not stop until the false heroes are purged from the world, Agent. The villain shoved the hero's limp body into several agents who were aiming at him, destabilizing them, giving him time to leap at them, and slam his weapon into the hard rocky arm of one of the heroes. For I am one of those who, like Stain, has taken up your mantle to purge the world of false heroes. Brah. The rock-like hero swung his other arm, grabbing the villain's face and slamming him into the ground with force, as if it were nothing special. Blood splattered him and lightly stained the pavement. That villain was out of his game. Madman, the officer in charge spat, wiping the drops of blood from his face. He's a madman. Sometimes, my good sir, it is the madmen who are the most sane. Boom. More explosions were heard throughout the district, creating a chain that condemned Shinjuku to be covered in fire and ash, creating a dark sky over the area, as if they were rain clouds, but only carrying ash in them. Can you get up? Keep it up. The Stain-like villain leaped to his feet. Slowly, the wound on his forehead healed itself. That was really good. Any object I touch becomes a bomb, the second man whispered. Unlike the first, this one wore a long dark cassock, held a book in his hands, and his black hair fell to his shoulders in curls. Purge the world of those who are false is the duty of any believer in God, my good companion. Gajajajaj. I'm not doing this for God, the first declared, wiping the blood off the deceased rock hero's clothes and walking slowly. His lips twisted into a cruel smile. The blood of those unworthy of bearing the mantle of hero must flow through this sacred and eternal blade. No more stories about Yurito Irakatana, a woman muttered with some distaste, as that story had been told to them countless times. Next time, I'll have a stroke. Wearing a harlequin costume, with her face painted white, her lips blood red, and the mark of a pike on her left cheekbone, that woman with a slim body and slight curves, jumped from the top of a lamppost without feeling anything when she touched the ground with her feet wrapped in military boots. Hahaha. I hope the chief is happy with this, Stain's follower noted, looking at the bodies of dozens of people scattered throughout the district. Hahaha, many false heroes have been purged. All because of Stain. Trump Trump. Wahahaha. The ground shook slightly. That shrill laughter filled the air with vibrations that struck the villain's ears. The walrus is already here. At least 2.5 meters tall by 3 meters wide, or even more, an immense man appeared among the dust, with his wide, round body, his chubby arms and his completely round face, if the face could be separated from the double chin. Wahahaha. Heroes are so fun. Flick flick. The three villains watched, without any emotion, as a lifeless body hung from the immense hand of that gigantic man, with fresh blood running down its inert body, staining the giant's pale skin, and dripping to the ground. You've done it again, Stain's follower declared, crossing his arms over his chest. Like a twig, you've snapped that hero in half. Wahaha. His bones were too fragile. The giant held the man's legs tightly while holding his torso with his other hand. Aren't you going to? Brack. Before the eyes of the police, some civilians, and his companions, the enormous man wrenched the hero's torso and legs apart. The sound of the spine breaking and the flesh and muscle separating would be something no one would forget for a long time, as would the image of the man's insides falling onto the asphalt with a wet, sickening sound. That's too much for me. The harlequin let out a moan, turning away from her gaze as her gigantic companion did nothing but laugh like a demented sadist, trampling the remains of that poor hero, as if he were nothing more than garbage. He didn't seem to mind too much that his foot ended up crushing the man's intestines. May God bless this death, just as he will bless those actions that we will carry out against the false heroes, banishing those who bring false peace to purgatory itself. Hejijij, the priest is right. As a follower of Stain, my duty is to rid the world of false heroes. I must follow the legacy of the hero killer, the man who paved the way to true knowledge. As people, as villains, it is our duty to show others the dark side of the world, while they think it's the light side. No, we are not villains, but we are not heroes either. If we're neither villains nor heroes, what are we? The woman in the group asked, tilting her head slightly while blinking hard, looking at the copy of Stain. Anti-heroes. We must cleanse the world of the garbage others have created. We must bring peace when others bring chaos. Being the difference is our mission. We are not salvation. We are not chaos. Black or white, we don't choose sides. Gray is our color. When he gets into a speech, he doesn't stop. The two-toned woman crouched down beside the rock man, touching the deceased pro-hero. Within seconds, her skin turned to rock like that hero's. But we must go. The master is waiting for a report. The others should also be heading toward the headquarters. Wahahaha. We've achieved a good victory here. Pro-heroes couldn't stop us, and the weakness of the local police force has only benefited us. Without All Might, everything is much easier for groups like ours. Brash. The gigantic man halted his ground-shaking steps. Stain's follower's eyes narrowed as his sword grazed his companion's throat. All Might is the only hero Stain acknowledged. I won't allow you to disrespect him, do you understand? He hissed, showing that his threat was completely real. I see. Leave it alone, the priest took the swordsman's wrist. He gritted his teeth, but obeyed. The Lord gave us a mission that we must carry out. Arguments among ourselves will only strengthen our enemies and weaken us in the face of the crusade before us. Please, my friends, keep your minds calm, focused on the true objective, and do not lose sight of the path that God has laid out for us. Without us, the Lord's representation on earth, evil will only gain even more power. Fine. Fine, no need to lecture us, the swordsman grunted, sheathing his katana in the dark scabbard on his back. He was truly annoyed by the big man's words. Fix this. And? The immense man smiled grimly. He took a step that made the ground shake beneath the feet of the heroes and police officers. Their faces were horrified, while the villain simply grinned like a beast. Slowly, his skin transformed until a fearsome beast stood in the man's place. Roar. Soon, the sound of teeth clashing against teeth and torn flesh and broken bones could be heard throughout the Shinjuku district. One day later. UA. Stretching like a cat, the sun embraced the support student's half-naked body as she looked over some blueprints, her hair more disheveled than usual, and her uniform gone. A threadbare tank top covered her tan torso, and pink panties covered her private parts. She didn't seem genuinely concerned about someone coming in and seeing her half-naked. She didn't even seem aware of this fact. Her green eyes remained focused on only one spot in the room. A tarp covering something she'd been working on for the past few days. And she'd finally pulled it off after days of no sleep and an investment exceeding 2 million yen, which was a real problem if it ended up destroyed. But since her father hadn't objected and was willing to finance more similar outfits, she soon let go of that important point, freeing her shoulders a little. Letting out a loud yawn, Valyria finally got up from her seat with the clear intention of having a well-deserved breakfast that would fill her body with the energy she needed for the day. With her time invested in that suit that would recreate the power of one of her colleagues, she had had little time to eat well or get enough sleep to keep her mind fully active. In the end, I only slept 3 hours a day, she mentally groaned, grabbing a carton of milk from the fridge, blinking as she shook it. Great. No milk. She, an exchange student who had gone to UA to study new methods of technical improvement, had finally managed to create a suit that could replace quirks in that society, giving way to the quirkless to be heroes, and, despite all her inventions and advances, she was not going to be able to enjoy a nice calm breakfast before the first class of the day, which was a nuisance all too real and big. He needed to eat a big breakfast if he wanted to be in the mood to put up with his classmates and teachers. A student collapsed against the kitchen counter, moving her legs to rest her butt on the cold stool, letting out a moan not because of the cold, but because she had no milk to start her hearty breakfast that would make her happy that day. As she was about to complain for the third time, letting out a moan, the faint sound of cardboard hitting the marble floor made her stop. A second knock rang in her ear. Valyria raised her head slightly, peering through her messy locks at a carton of milk someone had placed down. He followed the movement of that hand. Good morning. Whether it snowed. Whether it rained. Whether it thundered. Whether it was cold. Whether it was hot. No matter the storm or the situation, Togata Mirio's smile was always on his face, shining like a beacon of hope for those who had lost it. Eri herself believed this and had, secretly, told Shinso. Mirio, she murmured. Her eyes brightened again as they looked at the carton of milk again. He's my hero. Blushing slightly, Togata scratched his cheek, watching his companion take the carton and pour the milk from the same container into a bowl, filling the container halfway. It's not that big a deal, the young man said. Valyria was focused on her bowl, pouring some coffee into it and then putting it in a microwave. Instead of a workshop, it looked like a house. There was even a futon the girl had recently slept on, next to a suitcase she used for her clothes. Is it ready? He swallowed. He was nervous. If the suit wasn't ready, he'd have to wait a while for it to be, but if it was, he'd have to use it and practice with it, which made him doubly nervous. Even his hands seemed to be twitching slightly from nervousness, as if he were entering the UA for the first time. And? Firmly, Valyria gave the monosyllabic answer her companion had been waiting for. She accompanied that response with a slight smile, watching the boy's blue eyes shine slightly with intensity. The smile appeared on the third-year student's lips. Fully functional. I ran a test yesterday to make sure everything was in working order. The girl placed a box of cereal next to her lad, sitting back down on the cold stool. Your permeability has been completely replicated. I've reinforced the magnetic boots and EMP gloves for use in close combat because I know you'll be fighting the villains hand to hand. It doesn't take a genius to spot you, Mirio. The blonde scratched the back of his neck. He'd been completely caught out. He wasn't going to deny it. He was a close quarters fighter, and his quirk was the best possible defense against enemy moves and quirks. But Valyria stopped the spoon an inch from her mouth. There's a problem. Permeability can only be used for 15 seconds in 1-minute intervals. I couldn't make a change and improve it. It's complicated, but it's what I've been able to do. Calm down. That's enough for me. Mirio looked at the tarpaulin-covered object. Is that the suit? Exactly, the girl smiled proudly. And why wouldn't she? That invention would be a revolution when it came out. I made it black. I still have your original suit anyway, in case this one fails to perform. A hero should always have a backup suit, right? Mirio started walking toward his new suit. He couldn't see it. A white sheet covered it completely, hiding it from the eyes of the teenager and his creator, but he could see that it had been placed on a small platform, as if it were on display. The young man raised his arm. Stop right there, Mirio. Valyria halted her partner's movement, still holding the spoon in her mouth. Do you still want to go through with this? I won't stop you if your answer is yes, but I want you to think carefully. We're breaking many current laws, and this hasn't been approved by any high-ranking official. Not even the director knows about my latest invention. You could end up in jail if we're found out. It doesn't matter, Mirio closed his fingers over the sheet, feeling how soft the fabric was. I want to do it. And pulled her. In slow motion, like in a movie, the sheet fell away, revealing the dark suit to the young man's eyes. As he had suspected, the suit was inside a glass case for him to admire, so he could explore its golden lines, its black fabric, and the number 1 million on the chest, shining like gold itself. The student remained silent for seconds. He examined every inch of the suit with his eyes. From the magnetic boots to the dark cape he would use as a shield against armed villains, pausing to take note. Unlike his previous helmet, the new one covered his entire head, leaving nothing visible. This was another way to hide his identity, but primarily to allow him to use the suit's full power. And it really was beautiful. Speechless. Valyria crossed her arms over her chest, leaning back slightly in her seat. As an inventor, she was incredibly proud of having created the suit capable of recreating Togata Mirio's permeability. She had managed to create a suit that replicated a quirk, and it had been a difficult one. I hope you don't mind the color change. No, that doesn't matter, Mirio walked around the display case. It's very beautiful. I know, and I'm not a designer, the girl mockingly watched as her friend began to hover over the suit. Do you want to try it on? Pan? It was made especially for you. You should try it on and see how it looks. Even a few final adjustments wouldn't hurt. The girl placed the empty bowl in the sink, then walked over to where the suit and the blonde were. It must be absolutely perfect. One mistake and you could end up seriously injured, and that's not something we want right now, right Mirio? No. Snorting, the teenager stopped in front of the suit. Entering a code, the display case disappeared, and the dark cloak flapped slightly in the light wind that resulted from the movement. I don't even know if it's a prototype, she pointed out. Be careful what you do with it, Mirio. It's my finest creation, and the most expensive of them all. It'd cost a lot to make. You don't want to know. Taking a few seconds to complete, the suit was completely free as its creator removed the restraints that kept it there, standing as if someone invisible were inside. It's beautiful, Mirio didn't keep his amazement hidden. His blue eyes sparkled slightly, and he only took a step forward when Valyria allowed him to, raising his arm and brushing his fingertips over the number engraved on the chest. It's soft. It was created with bullet-resistant fabric, Valyria assured. She had used the best materials to create the blessed suit. As an inventor, she didn't want anyone to die because of her inventions, especially one like this one, where she still wasn't sure if it was a prototype or a fully functional suit. I'll monitor your movements. Put it on and… Breaking news. Both boys stopped their chatter, straining their ears to listen. The Shibuya district is completely engulfed in flames. A group known as the Zealots has stormed the Shibuya bank, taking the hostages and engaging in a direct confrontation with the police and local heroes. With no higher-ranking heroes present at the moment, chaos is spreading throughout the area, and residents of the district are warned to stay away for the time being. Mirio glanced quickly at Valyria, noticing the girl's light frown that only lasted a few seconds. I know what you're going to say. I can't stop you, Mirio. But I don't know if you're ready to deal with a group of villains. You haven't practiced with a suit, she explained calmly, seeing the glint of determination in the boy's eyes. Not even those words were going to stop him, and she knew it. Valyria. I know. I can't stop you even if I wanted to, he admitted, laughing slightly. He ran his right hand through his hair and walked to the table, turning on his laptop. Like I said. I'm going to monitor your movements. There's a communicator in your helmet that puts you in direct contact with me, without any third parties. It's a secure line that I highly doubt the government could trace. Good. These aren't tests, Mirio. You'll be using the suit in actual combat. Don't rely on the suit's properties. And remember. 1 minute of charging for every 15 seconds of permeability use. Keep that in mind when you use it. I'll try to update it so that range changes and you can use your ability with more time. 15 seconds and you use it on your entire body. 30 on each part. The charging time really is minimal if you use it on each limb, she added, accessing Shibuya's cameras directly with her computer. I don't know how you'll get from here to Shibuya, but be careful. It won't be easy. Lately, the villain seemed determined to overthrow Endeavor from his position as number 1 and the current symbol of peace. He doesn't generate as much fear as Almight. The recent attacks on Shinjuku and other districts have only increased the villain's confidence. Be careful. Throwing aside his sports jacket, Mirio began replacing his clothes with his new hero suit, all the while maintaining the smile on his lips. Was it a prototype? Could it fail? That wasn't what was on his mind. People hurt, children crying, that was his line of thought as a future pro-hero. He had to go to Shinjuku and stop the group of villains from causing any more damage. Those fanatics, are they linked to the League of Villains? Locking his boots, the boy asked a question with some interest. After the defeat of Shigaraki's master, the League had kept a completely low profile, not showing itself. For a time, it had been thought that they had allied themselves with the Yakuza. But the attack on Chisaki's transport was indicative of the opposite. No. They seem like very dangerous Stain followers, more so than the lizard who runs with the League, Valyria declared, typing quickly. There are 4 villains. One giant and immensely white, another stick-thin one dressed as a priest, a lunatic dressed as a harlequin or a clown, and the last one wearing bandages and a red mask, as if he were Stain. Those 4 guys are the Stain fanatics. Yesterday, during the culture festival, they attacked Shinjuku, leaving hundreds injured and several dead. Most of them were local heroes. They're worse than Stain, the blonde muttered, pulling at his gloves and covering his hands. He wouldn't attack places full of innocent people. They've adopted Stain's motto about false heroes and wreaked havoc in search of something better for society. They seem to know what they're doing, and I highly doubt they're all the same. Stain left behind some words that resonated with society, Valyria pointed out, remembering how the video of Stain's speech went viral. They're dangerous to everyone. The girl turned her head just in time to see Mirio complete his outfit with his dark helmet, hiding his face, hair, and blue eyes. How are you? It fits you perfectly on this side, she admitted. How does it feel? Flexing his fingers a couple of times and hopping a few times, the teenager finished the tests with a clap that echoed throughout the workshop. It's perfect. Shibuya District. The carbon copy of Shinjuku, the Shibuya District was in chaos. Dozens of police officers were lying on the ground, suffering from minor burns caused by the explosions or injuries caused by cuts from long-bladed weapons. Those who hadn't been so lucky were the local heroes. All of them were lying inert on the ground, either from a stab wound or split in half, their organs scattered on the ground. It was a truly grotesque sight. Inside the Shibuya Bank, with at least hostages, the 4 villains remained completely calm. With the local heroes disabled and the police completely defeated, they had enough time until a top hero appeared in the area, and hopefully, it wouldn't be Endeavor. Following Stain's teachings as if he were God, the Zealots had set out to eliminate all those who regarded themselves as false heroes, the greatest of them all being the hero of the flame. Endeavor. That hero was the pillar of all those who took the hero's career out of selfishness. Once he was dead, the whole world could change for the better. But there was still time for that. Following their master's instructions, the Zealots had taken several hostages and barricaded themselves inside the Shibuya Bank. They didn't fully understand the reason for this action, but they weren't about to argue with their leader. If he had ordered them to take hostages and barricade themselves inside a bank, that's what they would do without complaint. Okay. Does anyone have a 4? Wide-eyed with fear, their mouths completely dry, the hostages watched the 4 villains sitting, playing some card game as if nothing important was happening around them, as if they weren't villains with hostages in their care. I have a 4. The only woman in that quartet, she passed her 4 of diamonds to the priest. At last. Slamming his cards into the pile on the floor, the cassock man smiled triumphantly at his victory, savoring it without scruple. Don't buck with me. Stain's copy dropped its 3 cards onto the pile. It had lost to the priest again, making it its 20th defeat in that stupid game. Why has the master ordered us to take hostages? The girl fiddled with a knife between her fingers, observing all the people behind her. We don't usually use hostages. It's not like we know his intentions constantly, the swordsman declared, gathering the cards for another hand. He's our boss. If the benefactor orders something, he informs us. Maybe he's the one who wants this spectacle. But he frowned after the last word. He wasn't like that, they weren't like that. Following Stain's legacy, they were to purge the world of false heroes, not innocent people, and he was seriously doubting that the benefactor was someone who would desire the purge of false heroes. The Lord has guided us to this situation, my good companion. We cannot leave a commission from our God undone for anything in the world. We must complete the mission to continue the crusade against the false heroes. Yes, yes. You've said that 100 times, the swordsman complained, banging the deck on the floor. But where do you see the false heroes? These people are just that. People. They are not heroes who bring the falseness of their actions to the world. Of the four, he was the one who most remembered the actions and words of the hero killer. That's why he had taken up his mantle, dressing as him, fighting against the false heroes to bring peace to the world so that true heroes could flourish in this thorny world. That was his only mission. We cannot renounce the paths the Lord has shown us, my good friend. The benefactor is the hand of God on earth. We can only follow his designs as we would follow those of God himself and thus achieve the salvation of the entire world. If we renege on this, the funds will dry up. The immense shapeshifter laid his cards on the table, just as the Harlequin did the same. We can't afford to run out of funds. Not now, when our rise is within our grasp. It would be turning our backs on our beliefs. And it's not like we can. The master is quite convincing. He's created an entire network that keeps us together. We're not his only group of villains, and he'll be able to use others to displace us. He set it up from the start. We're just another instrument in his plans, which he'll get rid of when we're no longer useful. The woman stabbed the knife into the cards, holding the entire stack together. And I don't want to stop being useful to the benefactor. But this isn't something Stain would do, the swordsman declared vehemently, narrowing his eyes at his companions. No, he would only fight against false gods and people like the master or the benefactor. You are not Stain, the priest said in his flat voice. His eyes sparkled slightly. You can't believe everything he said. Cleansing the world of sin is our mission, and no matter what means we must take to achieve it. Stain created an ideal that many of us have seen reflected in our hearts. But it remains just that. An ideal. To achieve things with greater impact, we must do great things. And if that means using innocence in our missions, so be it. Master and benefactor are aware of the Lord's demands. I will follow them until the Lord abandons them. The swordsman gritted his teeth but said nothing. He felt his blood boil beneath his skin and his anger grow exponentially. Had they really mocked Stain's words? That man was misunderstood and more of a hero than many of those who called themselves heroes, wearing ridiculous outfits and striking exaggerated poses in front of the cameras. Maybe the world was beyond saving. On many occasions, that question had been on his mind, circling around unanswered. Now, some time later, it seemed he had nearly found the answer, but he feared finding it completely. If he took it, he would have to decide his own path. My good fans. From the room speakers, a distorted voice began to sound. It's time to fulfill the task. The people at the bank are false believers in God, false followers of heroes, and aspirants to a greater lie. You must purge the world of these false ones so that the Lord may send his wisdom and goodness upon us, his true followers. Gasps and cries began to be heard in the room. There weren't only adults among the hostages. But the children too. Casting caution aside, the swordsman stood up. His face twisted in anger and disgust at that small thought that crossed his mind just for a few seconds. All are sinners, Kinketsu. Now with his name revealed, Kinketsu clenched his fists. Was he really going to let a man like that taint all his work? Until they were contacted by the master and the benefactor, they had been working to bring back Stain, their only leader and the one who had given rise to their lives. But they seemed to have lost their way, being illuminated by money. Your orders will be carried out, master. The priest stood up, taking the Bible in his right hand. The rustling of the cloth reached the ears of Stain's admirer. You're not going to carry out that order, are you? Moving his hand to the handle of the katana, Kinketsu looked towards his companion. It's God's command, Kinketsu, the man declared, picking up a small stone. Will you oppose God's path? Shin. I'm serious, friend. My duty is to follow the Lord's will. If you oppose me, I'll just kill you. Taking a deep breath, Stain's follower focused his eyes on his companion. He felt the leather brushing against his fingertips. A tug and the sound of steel scraping leather echoed through the room. Just as you follow one path, I follow another. I will not kill children for the master or the benefactor. False heroes are my target and I thought you felt the same, the man hissed. I'm just following God's will. Akami. Rash. Transforming his arm into a massive claw, the gigantic man swung his limb at his companion. Anticipating the move, Kinketsu leaped backhand, swinging his hand, unleashed a shower of knives at the giant. Akami swung her other arm, transforming it into a scaly carp, covering his face with it. I'm not going to let you continue. Kinketsu leaped up, firmly gripping the handle of his sword. Kai Shin. Akami. Plat. Boom. Firing the small stone, an explosion came between them and the stain imitator, generating a cloud of dust that briefly covered them, preventing both the swordsman and the other three from seeing what was happening. Akami, take care of the civilians. Chaba, accompany him. I'll deal with our wayward companion. As a shepherd, I must deal with stray sheep like this one. A sharp sound of moving projectiles made the three move, evading military knives that were stuck in the ground. You're not going to move them. Falling to the ground, Kinketsu looked at his companions, his eyes lit with determination. He wasn't a cruel killer. He was willing to deal with villains and false heroes. He would even kill police officers. But raising his sword against the innocent would only break his oath. It was at that moment, while the fanatics were arguing among themselves, that one of the upper windows shattered under the impact of a dark figure. Pieces of glass fell between Kinketsu and his companions. Before he could react, this figure propelled himself off the wall and slammed his right leg into Akami, slamming his boot into the man's fat face, sending the villain flying and crashing into the wall. As the shock of the villains and civilians subsided, everyone could see the black billowing cape, the dark suit with gold lines, and the giant number million shining on his chest. You don't have to worry anymore. The hero walked slowly, the sound of crunching glass accompanying him. Lemillion has arrived to save the day. Now, with the new suit covering his body, Togata Mirio smiled, even though no one could see it due to the dark crystal covering his body. Remaining calm, he observed the villains and civilians, studying the situation. It seems the fanatics were in a fight amongst themselves. I could take advantage of this and… crack. Slash. Pushing off into a somersault, Lemillion dodged the downward blow from the harlequin-clad woman. The villain had transformed her arm into rocks, and they seemed to be beginning to cover her entire body. Kinketsu. We should put aside our petty differences and deal with the false hero. Kai-Shin tossed a pebble, taking it in his fingers. Cleansing the world of false believers is our main mission. No, surprising Kai-Shin and Chaba, Kinketsu denied his collaboration with his old companions. I'm not going to let this go, Kai-Shin. I'm going to take your lives for stain. Roar. Opening her crocodile jaws on Kinketsu, Akami launched herself at the swordsman with surprising speed for someone of her size. Crack. The jaws closed, slicing and shredding nothing but air. Evading the movement, the swordsman backed away with his right leg, leaving his sword behind. If this is going to be the case, I'll take the civilians. Tap. Kinketsu opened his eyes, watching as Kai-Shin shot another pebble at the people standing there. I won't be able to take it. Boom. This works, Val. Using his cape, Lemillion stopped the blast by taking it full blast, creating a cloud of dust that covered him for a few seconds, but when it subsided, it showed the villains the hero Lemillion's cape shield. The false believer, does he try to do good works? Ha. Your life of lies will not be atoned for with a good work. The hero pulled the cloth back, rehanging the cloak over his shoulders. Surprisingly, there was no damage to the fabric. I don't need to atone for any sins because I haven't done anything wrong. Saving these people is my only goal. Young man. The harlequin launched herself at the hero. I'm going to squash you, you little bug. Lemillion crouched, watching as the villain fell upon her. When she was 2 meters away, he simply jumped back, avoiding the impact that occurred when the woman's fist slammed into the ground, generating a huge cloud of dust and a small earthquake. That's really dangerous, the young hero declared, distancing himself from the woman. Can you turn your body into rock? Not just rock, the crackling of the flames alerted the blonde. Die. Froosh. Taking up his cloak again, Lemillion placed it as a shield between himself, the civilians, and the flaming woman's attack. Could it be that his quirk was the ability to transform his body into every element? Empathic mimicry. Copies the quirks of those he touches for a brief period or so. It was a year ago. Now he seems to be able to keep them to himself. Valyria's voice filled his ear. He mentally thanked her for the information. If that woman copied quirks by touching people, she was like the first-year boy from Class B. No, she was certainly different. She didn't copy him, but rather imitated him. Like a mime. Pulling on the cloak, Lemillion crossed the distance between himself and the villainess in a minute, taking the woman by surprise. I got you. You little brat. This is what I wanted. Crack. Soon, spikes of earth tried to impale the blue-eyed young man, however, they only passed through him, and Lemillion came within inches of the woman. Pam. Slamming his gloved fist down, Lemillion sent Chaba flying backward, feeling his chin ache, and blood trickle down his chin. That burns, the young man hissed, waving his hand. He had struck the villain when the flames hadn't gone out. Are you going to fight on that side, Kinketsu? Kai-Shin folded his hands, holding the Bible between them. It's not proper for someone like you to work alongside false believers. Cracking his neck, Kinketsu looked at his companion with narrowed eyes. I'd rather fight on his side than yours, Kai-Shin. Killing children. What have you become? Than what the Lord has designated for me. The Kami appeared behind the bandaged man. Kinketsu leaped backward in a crescent moon flip, firing knives at the scaly skin of the man, who had transformed into a humanoid reptile. This is wrong. Kinketsu retrieved his katana, watching as a Kami came for him, jaws agape. The innocent should be protected, not harmed by those who watch out for their safety. We were going to fight false heroes, a Kami. Kai Shin. Chaba. I fight for God's purposes, Kinketsu. I'm only interested in death. I want to face strong and hexy guys. Kinketsu cursed under his breath, watching as a Kami was about to split him in two. Zap. Pam. Falling feet first from the ceiling, Lemillion crushed the shape-shifting villain, slamming him face first into the ground and closing his jaws with his foot. Actually, that false hero thing is fine, the zealots looked at Lemillion. But my duty as a hero is to save these people. Evading the reptilian's tail, Lemillion got underneath the villain and landed a direct blow to his chin, sending a Kami flying towards the ceiling. I won't believe your words, false believer. I don't need you to believe them, Lemillion leaped over a Kami. I just need them to believe them. The Kami attempted to maneuver in the air. Lemillion took advantage of this, pushing off a ceiling beam and forcefully grabbing the giant reptile, as if he were a rugby player and a Kami his rival, slamming the reptilian into the ground. The sky. Kinketsu leaped forward, his sword trailing. He would finish off his old friend now. If he let him escape, it would be dangerous for the people, and as a loyal follower of Stain, his duty was to preserve the well-being of the people, destroying both villains and false heroes. Those are fine words, Kaishin lowered the Bible. But do you have the will to make those same words a reality, false believer? Kinketsu opened his eyes. Pam. The swordsman was intercepted by Chaba. The woman had once again covered her body with rock and launched herself at her former companion, pushing him away and preventing him from taking Kaishin. Damn it. True believers are capable of keeping their word, boy, the priest held up the Bible. The black book began to glow brightly, blinding everyone. And only those who believe in the true words of the Lord will survive here. Narrowing his eyes, Lemillion moved swiftly, using the lizardman as a springboard. His eyes were fixed on the book, which was glowing like a flare. Knowing what could happen if the object exploded inside, he acted only to prevent it. Grabbing the cloak in one fell swoop and wrapping it around the Bible, the hero rolled on the ground, wrenching the villain's instrument of destruction from his grasp. Boom. Smoke rose from between the folds of the cloak. Oh, I didn't expect that to work, Valyria's voice admitted in the boy's right ear. Lemillion could only let out a sigh of relief at having stopped the explosion using the cloak. Believers. Lemillion stood up, narrowing his eyes at the man in a cassock. You're just another madman endangering the lives of innocent people. That won't lead you to the right path. That won't make you the hero of this story. Remembering Chisaki, Lemillion could only clench his fists. Your words are just knives thrown at random, wounding people who don't deserve it. Do you think that by following the right path, you must kill innocent people? That doesn't separate you from a villain. Aishin sighed. He lowered his arms, which he had been holding up, and looked at the young hero. It doesn't matter if people die. The Lord approves of us finding those who are truly true believers. Villains. Heroes. They are merely people in power forcing their own way upon others. I am not a villain, dear hero. Nor do I attempt to dress in holy robes to pretend to be a hero. I will not take on a false role in this world. Bringing his hand to his chest, the man showed a fallen face. I am only an envoy who will take all those false believers with him, whether children or adults, for the word of God is law. Lemillion leaped forward. A Kami appeared from his right, colliding with him and sending him tumbling across the bench. Flashback. Sweat trickled down Togata Mirio's face. His blue eyes remained fixed on the figures right in front of him, a few feet away and not too far away. I'm sorry to bother you, his voice sounded somewhat strained, filled with anger held between his teeth, but I guess I'll have to ask you after all. The figures moved. Chisaki's eyes fell on the young hero of the UA, disinterested. It's him. How were you able to get here so quickly? One of Chisaki's subordinates asked, looking at the hero. I took a shortcut and I'm here to take that girl. So you understand the circumstances, you're acting like a true hero, Mr. Student, the Yakuza leader responded mockingly to the blonde's words. You turned a blind eye that time, didn't you? This child doesn't wish to be in your care. This girl is no hero. Mirio frowned. That's why I came here. There's no way to make you understand, is there? Let me put it simply. Zoom. You will die. That. Mirio fell to his knees, letting out a gasp. My sense of balance suddenly. Yahya. You're feeling a little dizzy, aren't you? When your friends are feeling a little shaky, eh? Me too. That's why I can't walk. Don't get too close to me, you'll hear my buzzing too. Gritting his teeth, Mirio tried to stand up. That must be his power. However, Eri is right there. Now is not the time to be defeated by an underling. Click. The sound of a moving gun caught the young third-year student's attention. Blah blah. The bullets tore through the young man's body as he spun around, surprising the villain. What kind of quirk is that? As long as my permeation is in effect, everything will slip through me. Mirio covered his mouth, realizing he had said too much. I was wondering where you came from. Nemoto Shin looked at the young student. I see, so that's how you were able to get here. What the hell are you doing? You missed me. Are you drunk or something? Moving across the roof, Sakaki Todoro stood next to Nemoto. You talk a lot. Yes, you're right. You don't need to do anything but shut up and support me, because I'm special. So I was basically able to force people to talk. Finally standing, Mirio staggered until he was leaning against a wall. So you're not the type who fights on the front lines. That's why I'm different from the rest of the Expendables. Nemoto began firing. Among the Expendables, I'm the only one who's aware of the young master's ambitions. He's abusing his own daughter. Mirio covered himself with his arm, even though the bullets only passed through. You call that big ambitions? Ah. For things to move forward well, compassion isn't necessary. Surely you understand that too, don't you? That time they ran into Eri. To make sure your own plans went smoothly, you overlooked the incident, didn't you? And then you interfered with most of our plans, and I felt regret. You want to save Eri. The truth is, you're just using Eri as a straw raincoat to make yourself feel better, aren't you? Nemoto asked, keeping his quirk active and forcing Mirio to answer truthfully. The young man gritted his teeth, feeling a drop of sweat trickle down his chin. He wasn't going to leave Eri there. Sakaki. He's leaving. I'm necessary for the young master's ambitions. He needs me. Nemoto turned his head. I must follow him. We'll walk side by side and share the delight of achieving his goals. Now, let me go. You busybody. Mirio threw his body to the side, using his quirk to merge with the wall. Phantom Menace. Mirio hit both villains with a swift movement. It's fine. I already knew I was carrying a heavy sin. Although I didn't realize it at the time, I called Eri back by showing her bloodlust. Both villains watched Mirio moving forward. There's no way he can move. I can't stand seeing that girl without a smile on her face. It's unforgivable. Air. Slowly, Chisaki stopped her steps, began to turn her face. Chisak. Pam. Enraged, driven by guilt, Togata Mirio's fist slammed into the Yakuza leader's face, while his leg passed harmlessly through Eri and struck the man carrying her. All in a single, swift movement that allowed him to move toward the girl. Arg. Why go away or he'll kill you. But the girl in his arms, Togata Mirio watched Chisaki's back. I'll never let you feel sad again. I swear. Her determined eyes shone brightly. Everything's okay now. I'll be your hero. Damn you, Mirio watched as Chisaki moved. Come back here, Eri. Or do you want me to kill him? How many times do I have to say this for you to understand? You were born to destroy people. No. No, don't listen to a word she's saying. The young man grabbed the girl in his arms. I'm always telling you, aren't I? Because of your selfishness, I end up getting my hands dirty. Every one of your actions kills people. Your existence is cursed. How can you say that to your own daughter? Togata Mirio shouted angrily. Oh, I see. So that's what you were doing. I don't have kids. Suddenly, the entire area was destroyed in an instant by Chisaki's quirk, who impassively destroyed the floor and walls, expanding the combat zone in a second. Overhaul. It is capable of disassembling and reassembling any object. Mirio acted quickly, watching how quickly everything changed, and his body was pierced by concrete spikes while he kept Eri in the air. It seems you're more than just your quirk, Chisaki stated calmly, observing the young man's actions. She has nothing to do with this. Even if I break it, it's of no importance to me. As long as I can repair it immediately, she'll be resurrected, the villain explained, smashing the ground. Even if it doesn't seem like it, I can return her to her original state. I've experienced it firsthand. Holding the girl tightly, Mirio moved, evading the Yakuza's attacks, dodging each of the cement spikes that were meant to pierce him. What will you do if Eri gets hurt? As it is, I'm the only one who can fix her. But while you're carrying her like this, you can't run away. So what are you going to do, Mr. Student? Will you fight me? Chisaki began to stand up. With that last repair I've sealed your escape route. Even your quirk won't be as good if I hit you with this. He points to the arm he's carrying Eri with, silly. I didn't think he could control his quirk that well. He's had to do a considerable amount of training, Chisaki's subordinate said. I'm going to destroy the needles and he'll lose his balance, Chisaki told herself, placing her hand on the ground. Holding Eri tightly, Mirio moved, avoiding the destruction Chisaki caused. In the air, the young man spun, covering his body with his cloak. He's hidden his body to make it harder to target. I always thought heroes wore those capes for show. Chrono. Appearing below the Yakuza, Mirio knocked the man down with a straight hook. Sorry overhaul. He's strong, but he dropped Eri. If I destroy that, he won't be able to stand against me anymore. That's exactly it. A shadow appeared behind Chisaki. Just what would a guy like you think? Passing through Chisaki's hand, the fist connected directly with the Yakuza's face, sending the man rolling on the ground. The hero's cape. Mirio shouted loudly. It's to cover. Eri appeared between the folds of the red cape, a little girl who is in terrible pain. Moving with speed, Mirio delivered a direct kick to Chrono, sending Chisaki's lackey backward from the momentum of the blow. He focuses on his opponent and predicts their next action. Mirio became one with the ground. His agility exceeds what I expected from a mere Yakuza. You're strong, Chisaki. I will never let her feel sad again. Those words appeared in Eri's mind as she watched Mirio move. But guess what? Mirio appeared above Chisaki. I am strong. I'll be your hero. I won't let you put another finger on her. I'll take you both. This is checkmate, Chisaki. Dealing a blow to his chest, Chisaki darkened his face. Don't say that name. Remembering his past, the villain looked at the hero with eyes blackened by anger. I abandoned him a long time ago. Chisaki began to stand up, growling. Young master, Nemoto began to move, also remembering his past. I must walk beside him. And a car. Mirio turned his head, hearing a groan. Chisaki threw a box full of syringes to the floor. Nemoto grabbed the gun, loading it. Fire. Nemoto watched. He needed a moment, just an instant of hesitation from Mirio to shoot him, to inject him with a serum that would erase his quirk forever. But he didn't hesitate. His face was angry, his quirk active, and he was fighting hard. How can I prevent him from using his intangibility? Nemoto opened his eyes wide, remembering the hero's words, how he was willing to sacrifice himself. Ah, I figured it out. Hearing the movement of the cloth, the Yakuza pointed his gun at Eri. Mirio understood completely. When the killing intent fell upon Eri, she wouldn't scream, she'd just close her eyes and wait, like any abused child. You're sick, Chisaki muttered. Following his promise, Mirio charged forward. Shortly after, the sound of a gunshot echoed through the elaborately constructed room. I won't let him feel sad again. Hovering Eri, Mirio watched his past flash before his eyes, from the moment he was saved by a hero to the moment he entered UA, meeting Tamaki and Nijire along the way, to practicing alongside Sir Night-Eye. His whole eye flashed before his eyes, through his mind, every memory. Oh. Why are people endowed with these things called quirks? What can they dream of? Dreaming that maybe they can be someone. Young master. I got it. You're all crazy. Chisaki stood up and shouted to the heavens. You can remove the power of the face, thanks to the power of that little girl you tried to save, the power you worked so hard to cultivate, it's just been reduced to nothing. And hit the ground. Pam. Chrono. He kicked the unconscious aide right in front of him. Nemoto watched in amazement, completely surprised by the boy's move, as Mirio had appeared in front of Chisaki, hitting the villain with a jab against his ribs, making the man gasp. Focus on your opponents and anticipate their next moves. Mirio shouted as he ran. Nothing I've done so far will be useless. I will always be Lemillion. Chisaki moved in response, driven by rage. Impossible, Nemoto muttered, watching the hero evade his master's move. Inconceivable. Sakaki's quirk should still be affecting him. He should have lost the quirk that made him invincible. He should be on the ground in the shackles of trying to protect Eri from harm. What the hell is he? Despite having lost his quirk. Despite having been affected by the quirk of one of the Yakuza. Despite having been shot. Togata Mirio had remained standing. 15 minutes passed since he reached them. 5 minutes since he was shot with the quirk nullifying bullet. In that overwhelmingly disadvantageous situation, where he was outnumbered 2-1, he fought approximately a third of the battle in a quirk-free condition. No, he didn't fight. He protected her until the last second. You want to be a hero, Chisaki snarled, glaring at his enemy. Across from a tearful Eri, Mirio stood, his body injured by the cement stakes Chisaki had created. And you wanted to save Eri, Lemillion. All of that's because of that disease tainting this wretched era. I'll cure all the deluded people like you, with Eri's power. Chisaki. I thought I told you that I gave up that name. End of flashback. From the rubble, Lemillion appeared, slamming Akami into the ground, rushing towards Kaishin, ready to knock him down with a direct blow that would finally defeat him. Haven't you heard? The villain raised both arms. No one will stop my lord's orders. Gritting his teeth, Lemillion leaped upward, evading the lizardman's thick tail. Whether men, children, elders, all will be led to the right path once they are sacrificed, for their lie will fall and only the truth will be shown. Remembering his confrontation with Chisaki Aka overhaul, the young hero could only grit his teeth. He wasn't going to stop. That time, Midoriya had saved him. But no more. A suit that recreated his quirk. Gadgets to help him fight villains. A cape that could shield the defenseless. None of that mattered. He was Lemillion, with or without a quirk, with or without a suit. Taba and Akami moved in unison, leaping toward the hero. Seeing this, Kinketsu lunged as well, swinging his sword against the woman's hard arms, slamming his old companion into the ceiling. Fragments of concrete began to fall on the hostages. Arg. Evading Akami's bite, Lemillion grabbed the reptile by the tail and spun it around in the air, shattering the pieces that would have crushed the civilians and thus preventing them from being harmed. It was really good that he added an enhancement to the suit that increases your physical strength, Valyria stated, clearly proud of her cleverness in adding the suit. Lemillion grabbed Akami and slammed him into the ground in one swift motion. Salvation, Shin snapped his fingers. You can't save everyone, Lord Hero. Someone will escape your grasp, and my lord will take them for himself. While I still have breath, Lemillion shot out at the villain. I will save everyone within my reach. Safe. Tap. Behind the helmet, the young man's eyes widened, following the glowing rock the priest threw at a boy standing there wearing an Almight t-shirt and shorts. I can't maneuver. Boom. Lemillion opened his eyes. Kai-Shin smiled. Standing in front of the boy, Kinketsu let out a groan of pain, followed by a bit of his own blood as he coughed. Hey, Kai-Shin, the swordsman gasped. Master. Benefactor. Akami. Chaba. Blood trickled down his chin. We only take the lives of false heroes. Of those who hurt people. Not innocent children. Thamp. Lemillion responded to Kinketsu's move by grabbing Kai-Shin's face in his hand, slamming the priest into the ground in a swift and brutal motion as the other two watched Stain's admirer collapse to the ground. Ah. I am Lemillion. The teenager roared, moving quickly towards Akami, slamming the shapeshifter into the wall and then into Chaba, slamming the harlequin into the ground, stopping right next to the last villain. Kinketsu. Saving a child isn't something a villain would do. NGH. I never said I was a villain. The swordsman rolled onto his back. Burns were present all over his body. Just someone who followed other ideals. Mirio. Get out of there. Some top are heading this way and it's best not to run into them yet. Aren't I supposed to have another student's license and stuff? But we still have to make your debut. How are you going to explain that you defeated 4 supervillains alone, without help, and also protected the hostages? Reporting that the sword boy helped me. If you do that, he'll definitely get hurt. Go for now, Mirio. We still need to regroup and prepare for your outings. Besides, there's still some information I need to prepare. Please. Good. Lemillion looked at the hostages, noting that everyone was fine, especially the child who had been protected by the villain. It's time to go. UA, at night. Sipping on a soft drink, Valyria observed her work of art. The Shibuya Bank hostages were escorted away by the police, and the fanatics were arrested. The swordsman was taken to a hospital and guarded by heroes and police to prevent his escape. The new Lemillion's actions did not go unnoticed, and both heroes and authorities were informed of the Black Knight who saved them, fighting alongside one of those villains who didn't seem to agree with his other 3 companions. Fortunately, there were no injuries. Hearing the faucet turn off, Valyria turned her attention to the workshop bathroom, seeing Mirio coming out with shorts covering his lower half, but his torso completely exposed. Your suit is really cool, Val. I was able to fully use permeability against one of the woman's moves and hit her. The boots were also useful, and the cape is definitely the most valuable asset. Mirio gave a thumbs up. It's amazing it was able to withstand that blast. I was surprised too. I didn't expect that explosion to be so weak, she declared. Somehow, the priest was testing us, and I don't know for what purpose. Did you know any of those villains? No, and I highly doubt he knows his master and his benefactor. The Yakuza and the 8 precepts of death are in Tartarus, and only they could be my enemies. Chisaki. Even though Chisaki is missing, there's been no trace of him. I highly doubt he'd try anything without his hands, he declared, recalling Shigaraki destroying the Yakuza's hands. Another mystery. But now, Dark Lemillion, he's serving the people. I shouldn't have made you that suit. I'll take good care of him. I know you won't. The god Mirio was, among the students, the best prospect for #1 hero, to be the symbol of peace. And he wasn't someone who left his dreams aside even if his quirk was erased. Unknown location. Watching all the screens in front of him, faintly illuminating his face in the dark room, the figure could only muster a faint smile when he saw Lemillion spring into action, fighting his zealots alongside Kinketsu. He, as the benefactor, had pressured the swordsman to make that move. In fact, he had expected it long before and could have saved himself the use of hostages and the entire bank incident. Lemillion, the hero who will save 1,000,000 people. The benefactor lazily leaned his face against his fist. A massive helmet covered his face, connected to thick cables suspended from the ceiling. He's a rare specimen of a hero. He has ideals. He fights for others. He doesn't crave money or fame. I'd say he's a miniature, much younger copy of Almight. His eyes scanned the young man's suit completely, scanning it. A good suit. Nanotechnology. Amp gloves. Magnet boots. The cape that doubles as a shield. It seems that if I want to bring Lemillion into my circus, I'll have to hire his assistant as well. Tramp tramp tramp. Lights began to come on, illuminating the immense room. Now in view, Benefactor turned the enormous chair he was sitting in. He wore a dark blue spandex suit that covered his entire body. His head was covered by a round metal helmet that left only his chin and thin mouth visible, but through which his pale skin was visible. In front of the Benefactor, 100 people remained kneeling, covered with dark grey cloaks, touching that immaculate ground that no one seemed to want to damage. This is what we were looking for. Lemillion's image began to appear in every place of that enormous room, even on the floor itself. This is the hero who will supplant All Might as the hope of the entire world. Images of his confrontation against the Zealots replaced his entrance. He will be the hope of many, the pillar of others, and the terror of those who break the peace. Images of Lemillion defeating Kai Shin, Akami, and Chaba replaced the previous ones. He is the light when darkness is born. He is the hope when fear invades. Lemillion's phrases echoed through the speakers. And he is our prey. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.